As soon as I opened my eyes, I found myself sitting naked on a sandy beach, staring blankly at my thighs. Resting on my legs was a pair of small feet clad in gray stockings, feet that belonged to none other than Chin Jujia, our company's CEO. My mind went completely blank. In the distance, the horizon stretched endlessly where the sea met the sky, waves crashing rhythmically against the shore. The sunlight was so blindingly intense it felt unreal. All around me, scattered haphazardly across the beach, lay about a dozen women, my female colleagues. Some were still dressed in fitted office attire. Others had legs covered in black or nude stockings, but none of them had woken up yet. This wasn't a dream. I remember it vividly. A global anomaly occurred, and everyone was thrown into a cruel survival game. One moment, we were aboard a company trip plane. The next, we were dumped into this hellish place. Is this some random island on Earth, or is it a fabricated simulation created by the dome? I sat there dumbfounded, my nose suddenly heating up. I almost had a nosebleed. Looking down at the warm, stocking-covered pair of feet on my legs, my heart tensed. I forced myself to suppress any inappropriate thoughts, carefully moved her feet to the sand beside me, and quietly shuffled back, sneaking looks at Chin Jujia like a guilty thief. She furrowed her brows briefly but didn't wake up, and I let out a sigh of relief. Turning my attention to the dense forest behind me, I couldn't shake the odd feeling growing inside me. The trees, they looked like bald cypress. But how could bald cypress be growing on an island? These kinds of trees wouldn't survive without being submerged in fresh water. Not far away, I spotted some bamboo and even a few classic hardwood trees. The beach itself was unnaturally clean, spotless, without so much as a plastic bottle in sight. My face darkened. This place couldn't be Earth. It was a synthetic island generated by the dome. Grinding my teeth, I felt a shiver run through me. And then it happened. An icy cold, robotic voice struck my mind like a hammer. Dome unveiled. System initialized. Trait 1. Master Craftsman, a jack of all trades. Machining, lathing, drilling, grinding. With just one tool and a blueprint, you can create anything from household goods to world-class war machines. Trait 2. Skill Proficiency. Anything made once takes less time and achieves greater precision on every subsequent creation. Trait 3. Creator. Anything you create can be manipulated at will. Skill Library. Currently locked. I froze in place. A flood of knowledge surged into my brain, and my hands instinctively felt equipped with unparalleled capability. Catching hold of this newfound control, I immediately turned and dashed into the forest behind me, disappearing in moments. Where's this? Chin Jujia groggily woke up, sitting on the sand in a daze. Her tailored work uniform was flecked with sand, but in no way diminished her air of sophistication, though her hair was slightly disheveled. As she looked up, she caught a glimpse of a naked figure disappearing into the jungle not far away. Su Fei? What's he doing? Her face flushed deep red, her heartbeat erratic. Soon, the other female employees began regaining consciousness one after another. My head hurts. Weren't we on the plane? An island? Did the global survival game really start? They dumped us here. The chatter on the beach grew louder and more chaotic by the second, the rising panic palpable. People began recognizing familiar faces, and their ease improved slightly after realizing they weren't alone. Look, it's all folks from our company. Xinglan. Meow meow. You're here too. Thank goodness. As they tallied the number of people present, something became glaringly obvious. There's one missing. Yeah? Where's Fei Bao? The baby-faced girl anxiously looked around. Out of the 17 female employees, I was the only man who came along on the trip. Usually, I kept to myself, was dependable, and often got roped into running errands. Privately, they joked about calling me the fixer or Fei Bao. Having me around gave them a strange sense of reassurance. But now, at the start of this survival nightmare, I was conspicuously absent. President Chin, you're here too, someone exclaimed, spotting Chin Jujia, and the group quickly circled around her like she was a lifeline. President Chin, did you see Su Fei? Fei Bao's missing. Chin Jujia stiffened at the questioning. The blush hadn't yet faded from her cheeks as she cleared her throat awkwardly and avoided making eye contact. I just woke up. I didn't see him either. She couldn't dare admit what she had seen, much less reveal the embarrassing situation. As the collective panic grew, the sound of rustling from within the forest broke through the clamor. Did you hear that? The forest, something's moving. The women's faces turned pale as they instinctively grouped together, stepping back toward the shore. One clutched a sharp seashell, another snapped off a tree branch, and a third, who was wearing high heels, snatched them off, holding the heels like makeshift weapons. Inside the humid, stifling jungle, I moved swiftly through the thorny underbrush, the rough bark and sharp vines scratching red marks across my bare skin. Ignoring the pain, I hastily tied banana leaves and vines together into a crude apron, barely enough to cover up. With that taken care of, I immediately began assessing my surroundings. There were no signs of large animals, no tracks, no droppings, and no venomous snakes, only a few seabirds gliding overhead. For now, there didn't appear to be any immediate threats. Yet the further I trekked, the more my mood plummeted. There wasn't a single trace of edible food in sight. This was the moment the survival challenge became real. Food and water were my top priorities, especially water. On an island surrounded by salt water, methods like distilling, waiting for rain, or collecting dew could work, but they were far too slow. My throat burned like it was on fire, my lips cracking under the intense dryness. The unbearable thirst forced me to act fast. I had to find fresh water immediately. Following the natural terrain, I made my way toward a cluster of damp rock formations. As I got closer, I suddenly stopped in my tracks. Near a half-buried small stone, the soil appeared darker, like it had been soaked by water. Without a shred of hesitation, I kicked the stone aside with my foot. It rolled away, revealing a shallow pit beneath. Inside the pit, a small pool of clear, shimmering water. Fresh water. My eyes lit up instantly, and I crouched down at once, cupping the water eagerly to drink. It carried a slight tang of rock, but it instantly quenched the burning thirst in my throat. As I took my third gulp, I suddenly froze in place. Tool acquired. Stone axe. Want to survive? Start chopping trees. Seed acquired. Potato. Ready in 3 days. Don't starve first. Skill acquired. While digging, if you dare to dig, I dare to give you water. The water dripped between my stiffened fingers as my eye twitched uncontrollably. This system, it's too on point, just magically giving me whatever I need most. A stone axe, handy for chopping wood and building tools. Potatoes, solving my food problem in 3 days. And the well-digging skill? That completely eradicates the water source crisis. I looked down at the stone axe and the bag of potato seeds that had suddenly materialized in my hands. My relief should have been immense, but instead, a deeper sense of urgency set in. Potatoes wouldn't be ready until 3 days later. I can't sit idle till then. I considered heading to the sea to fish, but hesitated, wary of what other creatures might be lurking in the jungle. After thinking for a moment, I decided to first climb to a nearby hilltop to scout out the area. From the top of the hill, the view extended endlessly. The sky and sea blended seamlessly into the horizon, with no other land in sight. The island was far larger than I'd imagined, a sprawling mass of thick, unending green. A crushing sense of loneliness and helplessness settled over me. Running low on energy, I decided it was best to head back to the beach and reunite with my coworkers. I had no idea if they'd woken up yet, or what shape they were in. As I neared the edge of the forest, brushing aside the leaves with my hand and stepping through, a sudden whoosh sound broke through the quiet. A black object shot straight for my face. My reflexes kicked in, and I twisted to the side. The object whizzed past my ear before landing in the vines beside me with a sharp smack. It was a black high heel. A second later, a chaotic barrage of sharp branches and jagged seashells rained down on me. Dodging and retreating frantically, I barely avoided injury. My back broke into a cold sweat. Holy crap! If I'd been just 1 second slower, I'd have been seriously hurt. Looking at the group responsible for this attack, my expression instantly soured. It was my female coworkers. You've lost your minds, haven't you? Are you trying to kill me or what? On the beach, a group of 17 women huddled together, their expressions ranging from terror as though they'd seen a ghost to utter embarrassment, their faces flushed red. But all of their eyes were glued to the same spot, the makeshift leaf skirt tied loosely around my waist. Their intense gazes made my skin crawl. Scratching at the back of my head, I grew increasingly agitated. Why the hell are you staring at me? I got something shiny on me or what? What I hadn't noticed was the gentle sea breeze flicking the banana leaves tied around my waist. As the leaves swayed, they revealed bits and pieces of, well, let's just say some very noticeable features. Needless to say, many of my coworkers weren't able to look away. After all, no one could claim they'd ever seen something so impressive up close before. The tension became so thick, the sheer awkwardness could have been cut with a knife. It was Chin Jujia who finally broke the silence, trying her best to sound composed despite the crimson blush spreading over her face. Su Fei, why are you, not wearing clothes? Her words lit me up in an instant. Not wearing? Take a damn look at me. All of you woke up fully dressed, but I woke up butt naked on the beach with absolutely nothing. If I hadn't tied this leaf skirt around myself, would you have preferred me to just walk up here buck naked? My remark left them speechless. Lin Xinglan crossed her arms and chuckled, her laughter dripping with ulterior motives. Fei Bao, you didn't do it on purpose, did you? Zhang Mina joined in the teasing. Exactly. Did you ditch your clothes hoping we'd get a peek? Not bad, I'll admit. But don't get your hopes up. We're not interested. Ha ha. Their banter turned my face beet red. These two had always been the biggest teasers back at the company. Yet somehow, despite being stranded on a deserted island, they still managed to stir up trouble. Chin Jujia's face darkened as she stepped in to rein them back. Enough. Stop messing around. This is no time for jokes. We need to have a serious discussion about what we're going to do next. With that, she gathered everyone together into a circle for a survival conference. But as soon as the meeting began, the group descended into chaos. I need boba tea. I'm dying of thirst. We should focus on food first. I'm craving fried chicken. This sticky feeling is driving me crazy. I'm going for a swim. Speaking of the beach, look how white the sand is. Perfect for a little sunbathing. Listening to their nonsensical bickering, the vein at my temple began to throb. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore and exploded. All of you shut up. My voice boomed across the beach, putting an immediate stop to the chattering. It was like someone hit the mute button at a fish market. With a dark look on my face, I scanned the circle of women and growled. This is survival, not some damn vacation. As soon as the words left my mouth, they all whirled around in perfect synchronization, pointing their fingers at me. You don't get to talk. We'll be the ones to decide, one of them rallied. Exactly. You don't call the shots here. In an instant, they banded together, united in their defiance. I felt my blood pressure spike dangerously high, but decided it wasn't worth the argument. Huffing, I spun around and plopped down on a jagged rock a short distance away. Fine. You've got the numbers, so you've got the power. Let's see how long that lasts. As I sat there watching the ocean waves crash against the shore, I couldn't suppress a bitter laugh. Sooner or later, when the thirst and hunger set in, and reality really smacks them upside the head, they'll all come crawling to me. The sun climbed higher in the sky, its rays growing relentlessly hotter. They'd been stranded for nearly 3 hours now. The chatter gradually faded, replaced by silence. Soon, the only sound was the labored breathing of dehydrated bodies. It all boiled down to one word: water. With their throats burning like they'd swallowed fire, most of them could barely stay upright anymore. Having already hydrated earlier, I stretched out leisurely in the shade, completely ignoring them. In the painful quiet, a soft, hesitant voice eventually broke through. Fei Bao, are you still mad at us? I'm so thirsty. Su Fei narrowed his eyes and looked over. It was Meow Meow Meow. Her face was drenched in sweat, bangs sticking to her forehead, lips chapped and peeling, her eyes brimming with panic and helplessness. Su Fei's heart softened, but he quickly forced it back down. This wasn't some team-building activity, nor was it a game. This was survival on a deserted island. People could die here. If they didn't sober up fast, someone would collapse before long. He turned his head away decisively, lay back down, and didn't say a word. Meow 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 stood where she was, clutching the hem of her shirt, eyes red and trembling. That's when footsteps approached. Chin Jujia walked over with a few other female colleagues, their faces pale, lips dry and cracked. Su Fei, we're thirsty. Can we have some water? Chin Jujia was the first to speak. Her tone was polite, but there was a hint of command in her words. The other female colleagues immediately chimed in. Fei darling, come on, go get us some water. I'm about to die of thirst here. You're a man, why are you just lying there? Hearing the chorus of Fei darling completely lit Su Fei's fuse. He sat up sharply, his face dark as a storm, and rose to his feet, towering over them, his glare ice-cold and piercing. Thirsty? Want water? He sneered. Just a while ago, weren't you all chatting about eating burgers, sipping bubble tea, and sunbathing for Instagram pics? Why don't you keep chatting about that? He took a step closer, forcing them to retreat backward, their faces alternating between pale and red. You think I'm your servant? Thirsty, call me. Hungry. What? I'm supposed to cook for you too? Who was it just now that told me to shut up? They were left speechless, unable to come up with a rebuttal. Su Fei's gaze shifted, landing directly on Qin Jejia as he raised a hand to point at her. You. Call me daddy. Qin Jejia's eyes widened in shock, her face brimming with humiliation. The other women exploded. Su Fei, you're out of line. You're taking advantage of the situation. Su Fei ignored them, keeping his unrelenting gaze locked on Qin Jejia. They all need to do it too. Everyone calls me daddy, and I'll go get water. Otherwise, find your own way. He gestured toward the sea. Distill seawater yourself. Then pointed toward the distant forest, or cut leaves, set up a shelter, and wait to collect rainwater. With that, he brushed the sand off his hands and turned to leave. Distillation and shelters sounded like foreign concepts to this group, as impossible as dreaming. The scene froze, leaving only the sound of crashing waves and the blazing sun. In the deathly silence, a trembling voice mumbled softly, "Daddy." It was Meow Meow Meow. Her head hung low, shoulders trembling in shame. They were so parched, on the brink of madness, they'd abandoned their pride. Meow Meow Meow's reluctant "daddy" landed like a stone thrown into a crowd, triggering a surge of angry protests. Everyone accused Su Fei of exploiting the situation and forcing them into submission. Su Fei didn't even spare them a glance. He simply gestured for Meow 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 to come over with a crook of his finger. Come here. Meow 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 gritted her teeth, dragging her feet hesitantly toward him. Su Fei made her stand behind him, tilting his head as his cold-as-blades gaze swept over the remaining women, finally stopping at Qin Jejia. That look, it wasn't perverted. It was disciplinary, almost like scolding someone who refused to listen. He wasn't a sadist, but he knew this much. If you wanted to survive on a deserted island, you had to shatter any semblance of false pride. This wasn't some petty corporate drama. This was life or death. The group needed one leader, or chaos would soon spell disaster. If Qin Jejia was in charge, the group wouldn't last 3 days. One wrong drink of water, and they'd all end up with diarrhea, dehydrated, and as good as dead. It didn't take long for the standoff to end. Qin Jejia was the first to crack. Her face flushed, then paled, and finally turned ghostly blue. She was trembling all over, biting her lip so hard it turned ghastly white. Her throat burned like it was on fire. She knew if she didn't drink water soon, she'd collapse. Her shoulders slumped, a flicker of unwillingness in her eyes as she resigned herself to looking at Su Fei. Dad. Su Fei daddy. Su Fei cupped his hand to his ear, pretending he didn't hear it. Louder. Qin Jejia's entire body shook with fury. Tears welled up in her eyes, on the verge of spilling over. But she also knew, if she didn't shout, there'd be no water. She swallowed every ounce of her pride and humiliated herself with a loud yell. Daddy. Su Fei is my daddy. Her shout was so loud, even some seagulls in the distance were startled into flight. When it was over, Qin Jejia looked utterly drained, collapsing to her knees as if her soul had left her body. Now that even Qin Jejia had broken, the others had no choice but to follow. They looked at one another, faces painted with reluctance, but one by one, they opened their mouths. Daddy. Su Fei daddy. Fei darling daddy. Only then did Su Fei nod, motioning for everyone to come closer. His face turned grim as he stared them down. Remember this. This island can kill you. This is a survival situation. From now on, I'm calling the shots here. You all follow my orders. His gaze swept across the group, leaving no room for argument. If anyone here thinks they can lead us to survival better than I can, I'll step down immediately and follow their lead. I'm fair. Whoever's the most capable should be in charge. The female colleague's expressions softened slightly. At least he wasn't some dictator drunk on power. Let's divide tasks. Su Fei snapped back into leadership mode. Lin Xinglan, Jiang Nina, you're coming with me to check out those rocks over there. There might be water. He gestured toward the cliff face in the distance, marked with streaks of moisture. The rest of you, head down to the beach. Pick up all the cracked coconut shells, the bigger, the better, and we'll use them to hold water later. Even though no one felt entirely convinced, they gritted their teeth and did as told, scattering in different directions. Finally, The once dead silent beach began to show signs of action. Su Fei turned to look at Meow Meow Meow, who was quietly hiding behind him. "You don't need to do anything," he said, curling a finger to beckon her. "Follow me. Let's get some water first." Meow 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 raised her head, her face filled with confusion. "Fei, why don't I have to help out?" Leaning closer, Su Fei chuckled softly in her ear, his voice low. "Because the way you called me Dad earlier, it was the sweetest thing." By midday, the sun was scorching, as if it were trying to roast everyone alive. In the dense forest, Su Fei led the group, pushing aside branches as he guided Lin Xinglan, Jiang Nina, and Meow 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 towards the cliffs. Jiang Nina wiped the sweat off her forehead, her voice faint. "Fei, how much further? I feel like I'm about to turn into roast pork." "We're almost there," Su Fei replied, glancing back. "Right below those cliffs ahead." But in the very next moment, Meow Meow Meow's foot gave way, and she fell forward. Su Fei spun around immediately, catching her in his arms. "Be careful." As soon as he touched her, he felt a wave of heat against his palms, leaving him slightly stunned. Her cheeks were unusually red, her breathing was labored, and her eyes seemed unfocused. His heart sank. He reached out, placing a hand on her forehead. It was scorching, an alarming high fever. And on this godforsaken island, with no medicine, no hospital, falling ill was practically a death sentence. Su Fei's chest tightened, and he wasted no time. Bending down, he hoisted Meow 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 onto his back. "She's burning up. We need to find water, now." Lin Xinglan and Jiang Nina's faces turned pale when they saw Meow 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 limp and unresponsive. How did this happen so suddenly? Meow Meow, hang in there. But she couldn't even hear them anymore. Slumped against Su Fei's back, her overly warm breath made his back slick with sweat. With gritted teeth, Su Fei pushed ahead through the forest, refusing to slow down. His sole focus was speed. And finally, he saw it. The dull gray cliff. Rushing forward, Su Fei pulled away leaves and rocks to reveal a small water pool he had hidden earlier. He carefully laid Meow 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 down, resting her against a rock. "Meow Meow, wake up. Drink some water." At the mention of water, she instinctively moved towards it, nearly collapsing into the pool as she gulped it down desperately. She drank so quickly, like her life depended on it. Seeing her manage to swallow some water made Su Fei relax, just a smidge. Turning to the others, he barked out orders. "You two also drink. Don't waste time." Both Lin Xinglan and Jiang Nina knelt down to drink a few sips, visibly regaining some strength. Su Fei's tone was sharp. "Head back to the beach immediately. Tell everyone we've located a source of water. Bring back all the collected coconut shells to store it. Bring anyone who's suffering from thirst here to drink. And get 2 detail-oriented women to come help take care of Meow Meow. We'll stay and help you instead." Lin Xinglan interrupted firmly. "You can't do all this on your own." "No." Su Fei rejected her outright, his tone icy. "Report back. Organizing the group is the priority right now. Leave. That's an order." The 2 women exchanged hesitant glances, but could only nod. "Be careful, Fei. Hang tight. We'll be back soon." Soon after, it was just Su Fei and Meow 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 under the cliff. Having drunk a little water, Meow 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 had stopped rambling nonsensically, but she was still limp as a doll. She leaned weakly against the rock, her breath shallow. With blurry eyes, she gazed at Su Fei, her head tilting to the side until it hit his shoulder. Su Fei stiffened, quickly steadying her to keep her from sliding down. "I'm sorry, Fei." Her voice was shaky. "Am I dragging everyone down again? I'm the most useless one at the company. I can't do anything right." By the end of her lament, tears were streaking down her face. Su Fei's heart softened at the sight, and he simply scooped her up into a horizontal hold. She was alarmingly light but so hot to the touch, practically burning up. Clinging to his sweat-drenched chest, her heat made his breathing hitch ever so slightly. And those damn droplets of sweat trailing from her skin to his side didn't help things. Su Fei's muscles tensed involuntarily, his expression turning somewhat strained. Shaking away any inappropriate thoughts, he carried her to a nearby patch of dry ground. Quickly, he laid down several layers of dried coconut leaves and sheltered her with a broad banana leaf, fashioning a makeshift bed. Carefully, he set her down and brushed the stray strands of hair from her burning forehead. "Don't talk nonsense," he said softly. "You're the sweetheart of the company. Everyone likes you. Don't think of yourself as a burden. You'll be fine after some rest." Meow Meow Meow's eyes fluttered shut, as if falling into sleep. With her finally still, Su Fei straightened, his eyes turning sharp and resolute. The Great Craftsman system has been activated. Detection of host strong will. Subsystem infrastructure genius initiated. Skill activated, while drilling. The next second, a faint blue holographic screen materialized in front of his eyes, visible only to him. From that small water pool, a dazzling, three-dimensional layout began unfolding. That was composition. It was a manual water pump. From the arrangement of the well's wall to the filtration layer, all the way to the lever-action pumping mechanism, every detail was clear, like a top-tier engineering blueprint. Su Fei took a deep breath. It was time. He walked to the edge of the puddle, squatted down, and pressed his hands onto the wet mud. Wall construction initiated. Estimated completion in 15 minutes. Please maintain physical contact, host. The next moment, his hands moved as if controlled by an outside force, accelerating so fast that they were almost a blur. Without any tools, he plunged his hands directly into the ground. Mud and stones automatically shifted to both sides, giving way to a deep, circular hole that plummeted downward at an insane speed. The dug-up soil and rocks didn't scatter at random. Instead, they seemed lifted by an invisible hand, piling up neatly to the side. When the hole reached a certain depth, his fingers swept across the well wall with lightning speed. The compacted soil was cut and shaped as easily as slicing tofu. The loosened walls of the well were tamped down and polished until they were straight, smooth, and faintly gleaming, resembling natural stone. Next, surrounding pebbles floated into the air and automatically fell to the bottom of the well. They sorted themselves by size, forming a seamless filtration layer. There was no rumbling, no dust. There was only his pair of motion-blurred hands, and a well that became more precise and sophisticated with every passing second. This wasn't something a human could do. This was a miracle. While Su Fei was single-mindedly constructing the well, the first wave of female co-workers Nina had called over arrived on the scene. Water. There's really water. Oh my God. We're saved. I was so thirsty I thought I'd die. They rushed to the puddle, fighting to take sips, their eyes red as though they'd just been handed their lives back. But then they looked up and froze in place. The normally unremarkable, yet decently handsome Su Fei was crouching on the ground, his hands deep in the mud. Before him, the ground was giving birth to a perfectly circular, deep well forming at a rate that defied all logic. Everyone was stunned still. One co-worker rubbed her eyes, trembling as she spoke. What is Su Fei doing? He's digging a well. Digging a well? You call that digging? He's doing it with his bare hands. Is he Superman or something? More and more people arrived. Those who had quenched their thirst and caught their breath joined the growing crowd, only to stop dead in their tracks. The crowd thickened, but the scene grew quieter and quieter. All eyes were locked on Su Fei as if they were staring at a creature that shouldn't exist. They were all dumbfounded, their eyes wide, their mouths hanging open, their minds blank. Their previously fixed impression of the easygoing, nice guy Su Fei shattered and reassembled into something unrecognizable. Shock, awe, reverence, and an unfamiliar sense of security, as if someone had finally stepped up to take charge, all surged through their hearts. Minute by minute, time passed. At last, Su Fei's hands completed one final motion above the wellhead. The stone and wooden components of the pump mechanism fit perfectly into place, as if they had been conjured out of thin air. Well construction complete. Water quality, potable. The notification sounded, and Su Fei stood up, dusting off his hands. He grabbed the wooden handle, the crowd's eyes riveted on him, and pushed it downward with deliberate slowness. Creak. With a faint sound, crystal-clear groundwater gushed from the spout. The moment the water appeared, everything changed. Clean drinking water was a lifeline in their fight for survival on this island. For the first time, these women, just days removed from the comforts of city life, truly understood the survival game set by that mysterious organization wasn't a joke. Leaning back against a tree to catch his breath, Su Fei glanced up at the sun. It must have been close to 2 p.m. The gnawing hunger in his stomach became harder to ignore. He wasn't the only one. His female co-workers were likely just as starved. Scanning the group, he saw about a dozen women huddled around the well, drinking small sips of water as though their lives depended on it. His gaze settled on Meow Meow. The flush across her face had faded, replaced by a faint red tint of health rather than fever. Now hydrated, it seemed her high temperature had begun to subside. They had temporarily solved the water problem. Next came food. Su Fei weighed the cloth bag in his hand containing potato seeds. It was their only hope for sustenance at the moment. Just as he was strategizing the next step, he heard soft footsteps approaching. It was Su Ro, the company's lead designer. She was slender, with sharp, defined features and a detached look, as if an invisible barrier separated her from everything around her. Her denim blue, slightly highlighted short hair added a confident flair to her otherwise cold demeanor. Her nylons were torn in one spot, exposing a patch of pale skin, and her white canvas shoes were thoroughly dusted with mud. She stopped a few feet from him, sparing him a glance before subtly throwing a glance over her shoulder toward the forest. Then she spoke. Su Fei, no peeking, all right? The abruptness of the comment caught Su Fei completely off guard. Peeking at what? He asked, bewildered. Without answering, Su Ro squatted directly in front of him. The more intense the heat, the fiercer the survival gets. Almost 3 hours had passed since the group landed on the island. At first, everyone was chatting nonstop, voices full of excitement and nervous energy. But as time dragged on, the chatter dwindled to silence, replaced by labored, strained breaths. Eventually, only one thought consumed everyone. Water star. Throats burned like they were set on fire. No one could take it anymore. I had already drunk some water earlier and decided to lay low in the shade, ignoring everything and everyone around me. In the stifling silence, a timid voice finally broke through the tension. Fei, are you still angry? I'm so thirsty. My half-lidded eyes drifted over to her, meow meow meow. Sweat poured from her face, her bangs glued to her forehead. Her lips were chapped and peeling, desperation and helplessness written all over her sunken eyes. Something softened in me for a moment, but I pushed the feeling back down. This wasn't some retreat or a playful simulation. This was survival on a deserted island. People could and might actually die. If I let them remain oblivious to that reality, someone would collapse sooner rather than later. I turned my head away, lay back down, and said nothing. Meow 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 stood there, clutching the hem of her shirt, her eyes turning red. That's when I heard more footsteps approaching. Qin Jejia arrived, flanked by a few other female colleagues. Their faces were pale, lips cracked so severely they looked ready to bleed. Su Fei, we're really thirsty. Can you share some water? Qin Jejia was the first to speak, her voice polite, but with an underlying tone of authority, as if her words were a command. The others quickly chimed in. Come on, Fei Bao, hurry up and find us water. We're dying of thirst here. You're just lying there while we're suffering? What kind of man are you? Hearing them call me Fei Bao like that, again and again, lit an explosive fuse in me. I sprang to my feet, my face as dark as a storm cloud, towering over them. My icy glare bore into their souls. Dying of thirst. Want water? I gave a cold laugh. Weren't you all just talking earlier about craving burgers and bubble tea? About finding the perfect spot to sunbathe and snap pictures? What happened to that? I took a step forward, and they instinctively shuffled backward. Their faces alternated between blue and white like a broken signal light. Since when did I become your servant? Huh? Thirsty? Should I just cook for you when you're hungry? Too? Who was it that told me to shut up earlier? They wanted to argue back, but couldn't find the words, trapped by their own guilt and logic. My gaze shifted sharply to Qin Jejia. I pointed a finger at her. You, call me daddy. Her eyes widened in disbelief, humiliation flooding her expression. The women around her erupted in protests. Su Fei, you're going too far. You're taking advantage of the situation. I ignored their outbursts, keeping my focus razor-sharp on Qin Jejia. I pressed on relentlessly. They'll follow your lead. Have them call me dad too. Then I'll go get water. I gestured casually toward the endless waves. If you really can't do it, figure something else out yourselves. Distill some seawater, maybe. I pointed toward the forest in the distance. Or chop some leaves down, rig up a shelter to catch rainwater the next time it rains. With that, I flicked the sand off my hands and turned to leave. The words distill seawater and build a rain shelter might as well have been spoken in an alien language to this group, impossibly abstract concepts to them. The situation froze awkwardly, with only the sound of crashing waves and the blazing sun bearing witness. Then, in the oppressive silence, a trembling voice broke through. Dad. It was meow meow meow. Her head was lowered in shame, her entire body trembling. The thirst had driven her to the brink. Pride was a luxury they couldn't afford anymore. Her soft dad was like a grenade tossed into the group, detonating with outrage. The others erupted, furious with me. "You're crossing the line, Su Fei. We're going to remember this." I didn't spare them a glance. Instead, I gestured for Meow 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 to come closer. "Over here," I said, biting her lip. She hesitated before inching toward me, step by hesitant step. After she was behind me, I tilted my head and cast a sweeping, chilling gaze over the remaining women, my focus stopping once again on Qin Jejia. That look was like disciplining a rebellious child. To be clear, I'm not some twisted creep. I just knew one thing with utter certainty. On a deserted island, survival depends on shattering any illusions of pride or entitlement. There's no room for office politics or petty rivalries here. This isn't a team-building exercise. This is life and death. The group needed a leader, someone they'd listen to without question. Conflicting voices and egos would doom us all. Put Qin Jejia in charge. Please. We wouldn't last 3 days. She'd have them drinking bad water and dying of diarrhea. The standoff dragged on until finally, Qin Jejia cracked. Her face flushed red, then pale, then bluish. She clenched her jaw so tight her lips turned white, her entire body trembling. The fire in her throat was growing unbearable. She must have realized that if she didn't drink water soon, she'd collapse. The fight drained out of her posture, her shoulders drooping. She glared at me, eyes brimming with unwillingness and humiliation. Dad, she finally muttered, disgust and shame dripping from her voice. I cupped a hand to my ear theatrically. Louder. Qin Jejia shook with rage, her eyes welling up with tears. She knew exactly what was happening, how I was twisting the knife, but there was no choice. She threw all her pride aside and shouted so loud that the distant seabirds took off in fright. Dad, Su Fei is my dad. The shout left her utterly spent, like a balloon deflated to nothing. She slumped to the ground, her spirit broken. With her submission, the others didn't have much fight left in them. They exchanged reluctant glances, collectively swallowing their pride. One by one, they spoke up. Dad, Su Fei dad. Fei Bao dad. I nodded in satisfaction, finally taking charge. I summoned the group closer, my expression stern. Remember this. This is a deadly island. This is survival mode. From this moment forward, everyone here follows my orders. No exceptions. I scanned their faces, my tone unyielding. If anyone here thinks they're better at keeping people alive than I am, I'll gladly step aside and let them take the reins. But until then, you listen to me. Let's be very clear, this isn't about fairness. Whoever has the skills takes the lead. The faces of a few female colleagues eased up slightly. At least I wasn't some kind of dictator lunatic. Let's divide the tasks, I commanded decisively. Lin Xinglan, Jiang Nina, you come with me to check out those cliffs over there. Looks like there might be water, I said while pointing towards a not-too-distant rocky edge with watermarks on it. The rest of you, head to the beach. Gather every split coconut shell you can find. The bigger, the better. We'll need them to store water. Even if they felt reluctant, they had no choice but to grit their teeth and comply. Everyone scattered, and the once lifeless beach instantly grew busy. Turning back, I looked at Meow Meow Meow, who was hiding behind me. You don't have to do any work, I said, curling my fingers to beckon her forward. Just follow me and drink some water first. Blinking in confusion, Meow 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 stared up at me, her eyes full of puzzlement. Fei Bao, why don't I have any tasks? She asked, bewildered. Leaning in close, I spoke softly into her ear with a sly grin. Because when you call me daddy, it sounds the best. By midday, the sun was scorching, its heat almost unbearable. As we trekked through the dense jungle, I led the group, pushing aside branches while Lin Xinglan, Jiang Nina, and Meow 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 followed behind. Jiang Nina, wiping sweat from her brow, gasped in exhaustion. Fei Bao, how much farther? I'm roasting here. We're almost there, just below the cliff up ahead, I replied, turning to answer her. But in the very next moment, Meow 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 stumbled and fell forward. Instinctively, I spun around and caught her just in time. Careful. The instant I touched her, I felt the alarming heat radiating from her body through my palms. Her flushed cheeks, labored breathing, and vacant gaze sent alarm bells ringing in my head. I pressed my hand against her forehead, scalding. She was burning up with a high fever. And here we were, stranded on this forsaken island. No meds, No hospital, nothing. Getting sick in this condition was as good as signing her death warrant. Where the hell is this cursed place? I seethed, scanning the surroundings in frustration. The food supply was already critical, our water was nearly gone, and now survival itself was hanging by a thread. If her fever didn't drop soon, Meow 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 might actually die. With my mind racing, I immediately crouched and hoisted her onto my back. She's burning up. We must find water right now. Lin Xinglan and Jiang Mina, seeing Meow Meow Meow's limp form, were visibly shaken. What's happening to her all of a sudden? Meow Meow, hang in there. But Meow Meow Meow, clinging weakly to my back, could already barely hear us. Her hot, labored breaths brushed against my neck, spurring me on with a single thought. Faster, faster. I grit my teeth, sprinting through the jungle until the gray-brown cliff rocks finally came into view. We had made it. Hurrying over, I pushed aside tree leaves and shifted rocks, revealing the small water pool I had hidden. Gently, I propped Meow 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 against a stone and tried to wake her. Meow Meow, wake up. Drink some water. At the word water, her instincts seemed to kick in. She dove weakly toward the water's edge, greedily gulping down mouthfuls as though her life depended on it. Watching her manage to drink, I finally breathed a little easier. Turning towards Lin Xinglan and Jiang Nina, I instructed, "You two drink as well, but don't waste any time." They each crouched and drank a few sips, their faces slowly regaining color. In a more authoritative tone, I added, "Now, head back to the beach immediately. Tell the others we've found a water source. Have them bring every coconut shell they've collected to store the water, and get everyone who's parched to come here to drink. Also, find 2 careful and reliable female colleagues to come back and take care of Meow. We can handle it ourselves." Lin Xinglan interrupted firmly. "You've got too much on your plate already. We'll stay and help you." "No," I refused coldly. "Delivering the message and organizing the group is the priority. That's an order. Now move." The 2 women exchanged an uneasy glance, but reluctantly nodded. "Take care of yourself, Fei Bao. We'll head back and be right here soon." At the cliffside, it was soon just Meow 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 and me left. Although she had drunk some water and was no longer talking nonsense, her body remained completely limp, collapsing onto the stone as she panted. Her bleary eyes drifted toward me as her body slackened, her head dropping onto my shoulder. Freezing up for a moment, I quickly steadied her, worried she might fall. "Fei Bao? I'm sorry," she mumbled, trembling with emotion. "Am I dragging everyone down again? I've always been useless back at the company too, never managing to get anything right." Tears pooled at the corners of her eyes as her voice trembled, carrying all her self-doubt. My chest twitched painfully at her words, and before I knew it, I had scooped her up in my arms. Her body was alarmingly light, but continued to burn like a fireball. Even through my sweat-soaked clothes, her heat was intense enough to make my breathing falter. To make matters worse, I felt her sweat trickling down her slender legs, dripping onto my side and sending a jolt through my entire body as the muscles there tensed involuntarily. Suppressing the inappropriate reaction with sheer will, I focused on what needed to be done. Carefully, I placed her on a dry patch of ground nearby after clearing and layering several dried coconut leaves, covering them with a wide banana leaf to create a makeshift bed. Carefully laying her down, I brushed the strands of messy hair away from her clammy forehead. "Stop saying that nonsense," I whispered with a note of firmness. "You're the company's little sweetheart, and everyone adores you. Don't think of yourself as a burden. Just rest, it'll all be okay." At last, her eyes fluttered shut, and her breathing steadied slightly as she drifted off to sleep. I stood up, my gaze narrowing sharply as my resolve hardened. Mastercraft system activated. Detected host strong desire, subsystem infrastructure maniac activated. Skill wall construction initiated. The next moment, a faint blue translucent screen appeared in front of my eyes, visible only to me. The screen displayed a 3D structural blueprint centering around the small puddle. It was a detailed design of a pressurized water well, from the construction method of the well walls to the filtration layer and the lever pump mechanism, drawn with precision like a top-tier engineering blueprint. I took a deep breath. Now's the time. I walked to the puddle's edge and squatted down, pressing my hands onto the damp soil. Well construction initiated, estimated time, 15 minutes. Please maintain contact, host. The next instant, my hands seemed to get hijacked, speeding up to a pace almost too fast to see. Without tools, I plunged my hands into the ground directly. Dirt and rocks parted to the sides as if pushed away by an invisible force, forming a circular pit that rapidly deepened. The excavated soil and stones didn't scatter chaotically. Instead, they neatly piled up beside me as though being carefully placed by unseen hands. When the pit reached a certain depth, my fingers grazed across the well walls at lightning speed. The hard soil sliced cleanly like tofu, shaped into form. The once loose well walls were compacted, polished smooth, and glowing faintly, a finish akin to natural stone. Immediately after, surrounding rocks levitated, flying to the bottom of the well, sorting themselves by size, forming a perfectly snug filtration layer. No deafening noises, no dust clouds. All that could be seen were my hands, leaving afterimages, and the well, steadily taking shape with impossibly precise craftsmanship. This wasn't human work. This was the work of the divine. As I passionately constructed the well, the first wave of female colleagues called by Janina arrived. Water. There's real water. Oh my God, we're saved. I was dying of thirst. They threw themselves onto the puddle, competing for mouthfuls of water, tears welling up in relief as though clutching salvation itself. But when they looked up, all of them froze. Usually just an average guy on the team, maybe slightly good-looking but totally normal. That's how people saw me. But at this moment, there I was, crouched near the mud, hands sunk into the dirt. A deep, meticulously shaped well was materializing before me, forming at an unprecedented, logic-defying speed. Everyone was dumbstruck. A few rubbed their eyes, their voices trembling. What in the world is Fabewood doing? He's digging a well. Digging? You call that digging? He's doing it with his bare hands. What is he, Superman? Wave after wave of people gathered. Even after quenching their thirst, they stood rooted in place as if mesmerized. The crowd grew larger but quieter. All attention was locked on me, an anomaly beyond their comprehension. Eyes widened, jaws dropped, their minds blank. The image they held of Fabewa, the approachable, unremarkable guy they thought they knew, shattered, then rebuilt itself into something entirely new. Shock, admiration, awe, and, more than anything, a burgeoning sense of security, the feeling that finally, someone dependable had emerged. Time ticked by. I completed the final gesture at the well's mouth. Stones and wooden parts interlocked seamlessly, forming a lever pump mechanism that seemed to materialize out of thin air, perfectly fitted at the wellhead. Well construction completed. Water quality, excellent, safe for direct consumption. As the notification faded, I stood up and brushed off my hands. Under the watchful gazes of everyone, I gripped the wooden handle and pushed it down slowly. Asterisk creak. Asterisk, a faint sound rang out, followed by the surge of glittering underground water gushing from the spout. When the water appeared, the crowd's collective demeanor shifted completely. Clean drinking water, that was the lifeline of survival on this island. For the first time, this group of urban women truly realized something. The survival games orchestrated by the Sky Dome were no joke. I leaned back against a tree to catch my breath, scanning the sun's position in the sky. Around 2 in the afternoon. The hunger pangs were getting harder to ignore, and it wasn't just me. This group of women was starving too. My gaze swept across the crowd, lingering on Meow Meow. The girl's complexion had finally regained a bit of healthy color, not that feverish flush she'd had earlier. Rehydrated, her high fever appeared to have subsided somewhat. For now, the water problem was under control. Next step, food. I weighed in my hands the cloth bag filled with potato seeds, currently the only resource I could truly rely on. As I was about to strategize our next move, light footsteps approached. It was the company's lead designer, Sue Ro. Her figure was slim, her features sharp and striking, with an air of indifference as though she was perpetually detached from her surroundings. Her blue-gray short hair was styled with bold highlights, and her flesh-colored stockings bore a small tear, likely snagged by a tree branch, exposing a patch of pale skin beneath. Her white canvas shoes were caked with mud. She stopped a short distance from me, giving me a brief glance before her gaze flickered towards the forest behind me. Then she spoke. Sufei, no peeking, got it. Her words came out of the blue, catching me completely off guard. Peeking at what? Suro didn't answer. She simply crouched down before me. Her short skirt rode up slightly as she moved, making the tear in her stockings all the more conspicuous. The frayed edge exposed a sliver of bare skin, stark against the torn fabric. My gaze, without permission from my brain, latched onto that patch of snowy white, a visual tug too strong to resist. As she shifted, a faint, clean fragrance mixed with the scent of a woman wafted over, sneaking into my nose. They went to the beach to bathe, without wearing anything, Su-ro said coldly. I only responded with a faint, "Oh," before standing up and making my move. I'm heading to the other side of the beach to avoid them, and to look for food. If you can't find any, then we're looking at 3 days of hunger. I shook the bag of potato seeds in my hand. This crappy game, Paradise Survival, doesn't follow common sense. These seeds will mature in just 3 days. Su-ro also got up, her voice tightening. 3 days? That fast? I nodded, too lazy to explain further. Handing her the stone axe, I added, "There's a bamboo grove over there. Without a shelter, we'll freeze to death at night with the temperature drop. Start cutting." She took the axe, but it was clear the weight caught her off guard as her wrist sank slightly. "Just this one? Fine, we'll chop more bamboo and bring it back." I didn't expect much from them, but I couldn't handle all of this on my own. On this treacherous island, no one's lying around waiting for someone else to feed or shelter them. Hell no. If you don't hustle, you'll die. End of story. All right, we'll pitch in. Su-ro pursed her lips, still wearing that icy expression of hers. But she understood deep down that all her years of relying on corporate rules didn't mean squat here. Her best bet for survival was to follow my lead. With instructions given, I headed briskly toward the beach. The moment I slipped out from the woods, my face slammed into something unexpectedly soft and springy. Ugh, the sharp blend of perfume and the warm, unmistakable scent of a woman rushed into my nostrils, leaving me dazed. Eagerly tearing the item off my face, I froze in place. A few shrubs near the forest's edge were decked out in a chaotic display of women's undergarments, lace bras, an assortment of panties, sheer stockings in black and nude tones, even fishnet ones. Evidently, the female colleagues who had gone for a bath had casually hung their clothes out to dry here. Sunshine filtered through the leaves above, casting dappled light over the colorful, delicate pieces. The oppressive, muggy atmosphere added to the surreal scene before me. My cheeks flushed. I hastily flung the piece of clothing in my hand onto the ground. "God damn it," I muttered under my breath, stepping around the area. But the mixed sweet aroma and that momentary soft sensation from earlier burned into my mind like a spark igniting dry tinder, fueling an unshakable restlessness inside me. Eventually, I circled over to the far side of the beach. Here, the shoreline narrowed and jagged rocks dominated. Struggling to calm myself, I steadied my gaze on the shallow waters near the shore, scouring for any stranded fish, shrimp, sea urchins, or crabs. The crystal-clear water revealed patches of seaweed and random stones below, but not a single edible creature in sight. I waded a few steps further into the water, my frustration growing with every passing moment. Distant laughter and playful shouts of women echoed from the other side. Slim silhouettes frolicked in the water, their fair skin glistening brightly against the sunlit waves. When they noticed me, their voices rose in unison. "Hey, isn't that Fei Bao? What's he doing all the way over there? Don't tell me he's trying to peep. Fei Bao, this side's got a better view. Want to join us for a swim?" One of them, evidently bolder, even stood up and waved at me mockingly, her tone blatantly teasing. I ignored them completely, staring intently at the water beneath my feet, my brows furrowing into a tight knot. The ocean seemed barren. No fish, no crabs, nothing. With nothing to eat today, and the potato harvest still 3 days away, how are we going to survive? Just as defeat began to creep into my thoughts, a sudden burst of notification sounds rattled through my mind. Master Craftsman unlocked. The art of survival dominates all. Tools acquired. Fishing rod. No bait required. Guaranteed catch every time. Tools acquired. Tinderbox. Lights a fire even in rain. Skill unlocked. Basic sewing. 0-100ths. Hand me a leaf, and I'll fashion an ancient jungle bra in no time. The next moment, my right hand felt a sudden weight. I looked down to see a highly realistic, modern fishing rod that had materialized out of thin air, complete with line and hook already attached. Clutching the rod tightly, I flicked my wrist, casting the line into the deeper waters. The silver thread arced gracefully before submerging into the ocean. Caught. Mangrove crab. Caught. Pacific white shrimp. Caught. Black bream. Caught. Triggerfish. Caught. Grouper. It felt like the ocean had an inventory cheat activated, full-on jackpot mode. Fat, meaty seafood continued to pop up one after another without me even using bait. All I had to do was reel them in. It was absurd, like a fever dream. But the tension that had knotted my stomach relaxed entirely at last. If I were to live stream this moment, the headline would probably read, "Deserted Island Survival. Zero bait fishing. Everything comes to you." Fishing enthusiasts watching from behind the screen would likely smash their phones in frustration. All their talk of high-end gear and secret baiting strategies, absolutely worthless in the face of this unfair system. Honestly, I felt like I could fish this entire body of water to extinction if I wanted. But I didn't get greedy. Once I judged the haul to be enough to feed over 10 people for the day, I reeled it in. Yanking vines from nearby trees, I twisted and braided them into sturdy ropes, threading each fish and crab onto them. By the time I was done, the necklace of seafood weighed a solid 20 to 30 pounds, glistening with freshness and life. Throwing the loot over my shoulder, I straightened my back, exaggerating my posture on purpose, striding confidently along the shore toward the group of women. They had finished playing in the shallows by now, donning fresh attire, gathered in a cheerful chat. As soon as they spotted me and the massive string of seafood hefted proudly on my back, their chatter froze mid-conversation. The next second, loud gasps erupted. "Oh my gosh, Su Fei, where did you get all that fish? Are those crabs? Look how huge they are. Fei Bao, you're unbelievable. How did you manage to pull this off?" Coming. Suddenly, I was surrounded tightly by them, their eyes filled with astonishment. The ones who were skeptical of me earlier? Gone. Now there was only admiration. "Flyboy, where did you even get that fishing rod? It's magical. Teach us. We've been searching forever and can't even find a usable tree branch." "Shufei, did you learn survival skills or something? How do you know everything?" Questions and praises hit me all at once. Surrounded by this flock of chirping, sweet voices, my vanity was sky high. But I played it cool, slowly tilting my chin up. "Basic stuff," I said indifferently. When I felt they'd admired me enough, I lazily began delegating. "Stop crowding me. If you want to eat, get moving. You, a few of you, go into the woods and gather dry branches. You, find clean, flat stones we can use as cooking slabs." Instead of complaining, those I pointed to looked thrilled, like they'd just been assigned an important mission. They ran off excitedly into the woods. Finally, I locked eyes with Jiang Nina. Casually, I tossed her the fire starter. "Jiang Nina, you're in charge of the fire. And someone go to the well and call everyone else over. Dinner's almost ready." "Huh? Oh, okay, got it." Jiang Nina fumbled to catch the fire starter, flustered but eager. Once I gave the orders, my female colleagues sprang into action. In no time at all, the campfire blazed bright, its glow painting everyone's faces red. A group came running back from the well. The moment they saw the long string of fresh seafood I managed to catch, cheers erupted. "Shufei, you're incredible. With Flyboy, we'll never go hungry. Flyboy saved us." The compliments kept coming, washing away my exhaustion. I found a nice patch of dry sand, leaned back against a coconut tree for support, and stretched. "You all handle the roasting. I'm taking a break." Giggling, my colleagues clustered around the campfire, clumsily preparing the seafood, but with enthusiasm that made up for lack of skill. I was so close to falling asleep when Jiang Nina timidly crouched down beside me. She's only 20, a new hire in the e-commerce department. With her baby face and dimples, she usually came across as naive and goofy, but right now, her brow was furrowed in worry. "Flyboy," she whispered. My eyelids barely lifted. Jiang Nina chewed on her lip. "We don't have any salt. Is the fish even going to taste good?" Slowly, I opened my eyes and looked at her. "There's no easy way to get salt here. Sea salt from evaporation is full of impurities and could dehydrate you, which is dangerous in a place like this. It's not worth it." Jiang Nina just stared at me, stunned. My tone stayed calm, soothing. "Don't worry. This seafood is fresh enough, it's naturally flavorful. Think of it as eating all-natural barbecue." Closing my eyes again, I added, "Stop fretting. Keep an eye on the fire, and when the fish is ready, bring 2 over to me." "Got it, Flyboy." She nodded quickly and scampered back to the fire. Time dragged on, and the delicious aroma of grilled fish filled the camp. Too tired to fight it, I drifted off to the smell of roasting seafood. No idea how much time had passed when I felt a gentle nudge on my arm. "Flyboy, wake up." It was Jiang Nina, her voice soft and full of concern. Leerily, I opened my eyes. She was crouching in front of me, holding out 2 skewers of grilled fish. The fish skin was golden and crispy, glistening with oil, the aroma enough to weaken anyone's defenses. Sitting up, I grabbed the food and wasted no time biting in. It was hot, burning my mouth, but so delicious that I couldn't stop for the heat. Jiang Nina rested her chin on her hands, her eyes sparkling as she watched me eat. "You must be exhausted, Flyboy," she said softly. I mumbled through a mouthful of fish. Seeing my weariness, she felt a pang in her chest, thinking about how much I'd shouldered for everyone. Her gaze dropped to my sand-coated feet. As if making up her mind, she leaned forward and pressed her hands around my ankle. Before I could react, she started clumsily massaging my feet, the warmth from her hands traveling upward, making me freeze in surprise. I looked down, meeting her big, earnest eyes. I didn't stop her, letting her continue as I went back to eating guilt-free. Her technique was amateurish, inconsistent in pressure, but she kept going, working her way up from my ankle to my calf. The problem? I was partially reclined, legs apart, dressed in nothing but a simple makeshift leaf skirt, not exactly a reliable barrier. When she reached my thigh, her hand slipped slightly, brushing against a spot she definitely shouldn't have. My body stiffened instantly. Jiang Nina froze as well, glancing for just a second before her face flushed crimson from her collar to her ears. Panicked, she yanked her hand away like she'd been burned. "I'll go grill more fish for you." She stammered out an excuse before bolting back to the campfire, her retreat clearly flustered. I sat there with my half-eaten fish, stunned, looking down at the skewer, then at Jiang Nina's hurried figure by the fire. I felt inexplicably stuck, like something heavy had lodged itself in my chest. Finishing the fish, I forced myself to stand, attempting to shake off the tension creeping in my gut. The sun dipped below the horizon, washing the island in twilight hues. Night was falling fast, and the sharp temperature drop that came with it was creeping in. If we didn't figure out shelter soon, we were in for a rough night. I glanced over at the 10 or so women chatting by the campfire. They looked satisfied from the meal, but there was a hollow kind of cheerfulness in their laughter, like they were still missing the comforts of home. Coffee, fried chicken, and of course, salt. I realized it was a dream. Build a shelter first. Can't let anyone freeze to death. I made up my mind, walking over to Suro. "Give me the stone axe." The moment I moved, chaos erupted from the group of women around me. "Feibao, where are you going?" "It's getting dark. Where will we sleep?" I'm scared. They'd already started relying on me as their only support. The darker it got, the more panicked they became. I only said, "Chop bamboo, build a shelter." I fixed my eyes on Suro and asked, "How much have you chopped?" Suro puffed her chest out with an expression that was clearly waiting for praise. 2 pieces. Pretty awesome, right? The corner of my mouth twitched. 10+ people working all afternoon, just for 2 pieces of bamboo. I couldn't even be bothered to call them out. I merely nodded. "I'll do the chopping. You all come over and help build it up later." With that, I headed straight for the bamboo grove. But instead of swinging the axe right away, I wandered along the grove edge, searching for sharp-edged stones. Picking out a few with solid, angular shapes, I sat down and began hammering away. Asterisk bang, 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 asterisk. The impact echoed through the forest. My master craftsman talent kicked in. Every strike was as precise as if it were meticulously calculated. As if, with each blow, I was carving out a path for our survival tonight. Stone splinters flew everywhere. Before long, one of the stones was chipped into the shape of an axe head. I even ground out a crude cutting edge that could slice meat if needed. I tore tree bark into fibrous strips and tightly bound the stone axe head to a sturdy stick. Just like that, a primitive stone axe was born. Damn, this talent is something else, I thought, relieved. Without it, forget about making an axe. Shaping a stone decently wouldn't have been easy. I tested its weight and balance with a couple of swings. It wasn't perfect, but functional enough for now. After crafting 2 more axes, I slung 2 around my waist, holding one firmly, and headed for a bamboo stalk about as thick as my calf. I threw my arms into a full swing. Thwack, thwack, crunch, crunch. The stone axe couldn't match a steel one, and every chop was a laborious thud that churned bamboo chips into the air. The stalk splintered, creaking for a moment before crashing to the ground with a loud whump. I examined the jagged stump that looked like it had been chewed on by a dog, my face darkening. It's still just a stone axe after all. Resigned to the reality, I shifted focus to stripping the branches and leaves off the bamboo, leaving a bare stalk behind. At the base, I made a deep notch, wedging the head of the axe in before gripping the stalk in both hands and snapping it with force. Crack! The entire bamboo split in two. These pieces would serve as roofing material. The concave sides, when layered, would let rainwater flow off naturally. And so began the grueling repetition. Chop, strip, snap, pile. The rhythmic thwacks of chopping never ceased, and soon enough, there was a growing mound of bamboo stalks and half planks. My arms burned and grew numb, but I didn't stop. After delving into the forest's depths, I hacked down a few broad banana leaves, each one as large as a fan. Only when I'd amassed enough materials for a makeshift shelter to cram a dozen people did I finally let myself stop, gasping for breath. Emerging from the grove, I waved to the women. "Come over and help." They were stunned into silence at the sight of the bamboo and banana leaves piled like a small hill. Under my direction, the construction began. Bamboo stalks were driven into the ground for support and bracing. Split bamboo panels formed a skeletal roof frame, which was then layered with thick banana leaves for coverage. By the time the stick-and-leaf shelter was just barely livable, night had fully fallen. The last bit of light succumbed to darkness, leaving us only a flickering campfire to fend off the biting ocean wind. I collapsed onto the ground with a heavy sigh, completely worn out, my arms too numb to even lift. The women, equally drained, slumped within the shelter, some sitting, others lying, all gasping for air. The sea breeze now cut like a blade. From sweltering heat during the day, the temperature had plummeted to what must have been below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. As I lay there staring into the fire, unease crept into my mind. It spread like an infection, filling the shelter with a suffocating tension. "I miss home," one of them finally stammered, her voice breaking. "I miss my little brother. Is he okay right now? I don't even know where my parents are. Can they even survive in this survival game? My stockings are ruined. What am I supposed to wear tomorrow? My bra strap's torn too. Are we going to end up naked or wearing leaves in a few days?" Asterisk sniffles asterisk. "I'm scared of the dark. Do you think there are wild animals on this island? I'm afraid of ghosts." One by one, the sobs broke out, cascading through the shelter like waves crashing on the shore. Heavy and unrelenting, they pressed down upon us all. I sighed. I didn't know how to comfort anyone. This was the harsh reality of this game. There was no escaping it. I wanted to go back too. If life had stayed normal, I'd probably be off work by now, gaming and trash-talking with my buddies. But that reality was gone. Now I was their rock. If I broke, they'd all crumble even further. Some clung to the fire for warmth. Others lay stunned into stillness. I leaned against the farthest corner of the shelter, deliberately keeping a bit of distance from the group. Night deepened, and the crying eventually died down. Exhaustion finally took over. Some stared blankly up at the shoddy roof. Others passed out as soon as the weeping stopped. I too drifted off into a hazy state when suddenly I felt a warmth pressed tightly against me. It wasn't me. Someone had moved closer. A hand clung onto my arm with a vice-like grip. Meow 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 had somehow rolled her way over, tangled around me like an octopus. One of her legs unconsciously draped across my waist, her face buried into my chest, as if anchoring herself to the only warmth she could hold on to. Half asleep, she murmured softly, "So warm." Cold. Her soft, warm body pressed tightly against me through the thin layer of fabric. Her breath brushed against my chest, carrying a faint, sweet scent of youth that flirted with the tension I'd carried all day. That night, I had a rather vivid dream. A dream filled with fiery passion. No restraint, no suppression. The desire, bubbling and contained for so long, burst like an explosion. Visions of chaos stormed my mind. Roaring missiles, scorching blasts, and mushroom clouds rising against the sky, only to fall into the most deafening silence. I woke with the first light of the dawn, and an immediate sense of unease hit me. That rush, too intense. The heat of the dream, too real. I opened my eyes to find Mia clinging to me tightly, as if warding off the cold in her sleep. She was peaceful, vulnerable even, and I didn't dare to wake her. Slowly, Painfully, I peeled her hands off me and slipped away like a thief sneaking out at night. With a silent exhale of relief, I stood. But glancing down, my face burned hotter than the rising sun. The dream's intensity hadn't completely faded, leaving traces that made my discomfort way too apparent. Mortified, I stepped outside, trying to calm myself. The crisp morning air helped, but only barely. I was about to head to the well to splash my face when I noticed Jia Jia sitting near the remains of last night's campfire. She sat hugging her knees, staring into the remnants of ash as if lost in thought. Startled by my movement, her gaze shifted towards me. Her face turned scarlet, eyes darting to the exact part of me I'd been trying to hide. Awkwardly, I gave a small nod as if acknowledging her, then spun on my heel intending to escape straight into the woods. But before I could retreat, she stood and followed, catching up to me with steps that barely made a sound. Annoyed, I stopped in my tracks and turned to face her. "What's up, boss?" "Couldn't sleep," she replied quietly, as though every word took extra effort. "You were up all night?" She nodded. At the office, Jia Jia was our authoritative CEO, a woman whose presence kept everyone straight-backed and alert. We existed in separate worlds. She was the boss, and I was the grunt carrying out her orders. But here, stranded on this island, things had changed. "You should really rest," I said, softening my tone. "It's only the second day. You'll get used to it." "Okay," she hesitated before adding. "Do you think we'll survive this, Fei Bao?" Hearing her use my name threw me off. Back at work, she wouldn't have even looked my way unless it was for work matters, and definitely not with this uncertain, dependent tone. I shook off my hesitation and forced a light-hearted smile. "Of course we will. Stick together, we'll pull through. Think about prehistoric people. They had nothing, but they made it." She nodded, though worry still lingered in her eyes. We walked in silence the rest of the way to the well. Occasionally, the crunch of leaves beneath our feet would break the quiet. "Jia Jia," I said as we reached the well. "I'm about to take a bath. You sure you still want to hang around?" "Oh, no. I'll wait over there," she stammered, rushing towards a boulder nearby and crouching behind it. "By the way," she said softly without turning around, "you don't have to call me CEO. Just call me Jia Jia, or Jia 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 if you want." "Noted, Jia Jia Jia," I replied, my voice laced with amusement. As water splashed over me, I thought back to earlier. Only the second day on this island, and already, things between us were shifting. Habit, hierarchy, they were crumbling. "Fei Bao, what's the plan today? Got anything lined up?" she called from her spot. "Fei Bao." My silence apparently drew her curiosity. She turned her head and froze when her eyes landed on me mid-shower. Her face burst into color. "What are you doing?" she shrieked, spinning back around and stepping away as if burned by the sight. "I'm bathing," I stated plainly, barely withholding an eye roll. "You're the one peeking. How am I wrong here? Finish up and meet me after. We need to plan for the day," she barked, her voice wavering between embarrassment and anger as she fled. I sighed, shaking my head. Couldn't blame her for the awkward moment. I should have been more mindful anyway. Once I finished, refreshed and dressed, I began heading back to camp. That's when my foot kicked something, sending me stumbling. Looking down, I saw the culprit. Not just any rock, but one with a faint golden hue glinting in the sunlight. "Is this gold?" Curious, I knelt and picked it up. It was heavy, far too heavy for its size. Then, before I could process the discovery, something odd happened. Ding. System activated. Acquired talent. Resourceful feeder. Stop staring. Look around you. Resources randomly generated at your feet. What? Soon enough, like a magnet pulling me in, my attention darted to nearby areas where more surprises awaited. Iron, ore, copper, coal, nitrate deposits, tungsten. The finds kept coming. The yellow sulfur powder lay before me. My heart sank. There's no sign of a volcano on this island. Where could sulfur even come from? Was this something forced in by the system? But a bigger problem loomed. I knew I could somewhat fake my way through dealing with copper or iron by crushing and smelting them at high temperatures. But tungsten? Refining an advanced metal like that was no joke. How the hell would I refine it without proper equipment? Am I really expected to build a blast furnace from scratch on this miserable island? I stared again at the sulfur and saltpeter, and alarm bells went off in my head. Add charcoal to the mix, and you're looking at black powder. Wait, was I seriously supposed to craft firearms on this deserted island? Here we go, system booting up. Acquired skill. Refining, don't complain, just refine. Acquired skill. Crafting, what metal do you need? I've got you. Acquired skill. Gunpowder, welcome to the boom boom era. A second later, a flood of knowledge was force-fed directly into my brain. How to purify ores, how to alloy metals, how to fine-tune recipes and processes. Everything was laid out, methodically clear. The most insane part, though? Gunpowder. From black powder to nitroglycerin, all the way up to nitrocellulose. If it explodes, I now know how to make it. I forced myself to suppress my expression and glanced at the personal interface only I could see. Talent 1, Master Craftsman of the Nation. Talent 2, Proficiency Gains. Talent 3, Creator. Talent 4, Feeding Frenzy. Skills, Refining, Crafting, Gunpowder, Stitching. Tools, Stone Axe X3, Fishing Rod, Tinderbox. Seeds, Potatoes. I closed the menu, looking down at the gold ore in my hands, then at the sheer abundance of mineral deposits scattered around me. My stomach churned uneasily. Survival. I let out a scoff. Feels more like I'm being strong-armed into dragging humanity from the Stone Age straight to the Industrial Revolution. Rolling my eyes, I clicked my tongue. This system? It doesn't play fair. The hacks it grants are outright ridiculous. It's like I've been plucked right out of a cave and dropped onto the doorstep of modern industrial society. I hefted an iron or rock in my hand. Heavy and coarse, it tempted me to hammer out a badass alloyed machete on the spot. But I held back. There wasn't even a roof over our heads right now. Worrying about weapons would only get us killed sooner. Survival comes first, and for that, we need the right tools. Taking a deep breath, I focused. Talent activated, Master Craftsman of the Nation. Skill activated, Refining. No sparks, no clanging of hammers. Everything unfolded quietly, like I was in a dream. The iron ore in my hands began to heat, soften, and change texture. Like molding clay, the structure in my mind took shape as materials melted into place. Impurities sloughed off into ash. The essence of the iron condensed, warped, and solidified. In the blink of an eye, 2 finished products appeared in my hands. A deep-bottomed soup pot and a wide-mouthed frying pan. Shiny, durable, and heavy, they gleamed with a cold metallic luster that caught the light just right. The non-slip textures on the handles were almost absurd in their precision. The craftsmanship? It wouldn't look out of place on display in a high-end store. They almost felt like brand new pieces of industrial art. I wrapped a knuckle on one of the pots. Dang! The metallic resonance was crisp enough to make my chest tighten nervously. With these 2 pots, the efficiency of boiling water and cooking meat would leave makeshift stone slabs in the dust. I grabbed both pots and began heading back toward the shelter. By now, things were already getting noisy there. The sun had risen, and my female co-workers were starting to wake up. Groggy, disheveled, and still reeling from the ordeal, they were crammed together in a messy cluster. But the instant I entered, all their eyes snapped to the items in my hands. Iron cookware? On a deserted island? A gaggle of them rushed over, eyes as wide as saucers. Sufei, what kind of magic trick is this? One of them reached out to touch the pot, only to draw back with a start. It was cold, solid steel. Where did you even get this? This is insane. Are you like Superman or Doraemon or something? The gasps of amazement piled up, and someone even yelled, "He's a creator!" I placed the 2 pots on the ground with a calm expression, acting like this was entirely normal. Moments like these called for composure. There was no way I was revealing the system to them. This game might suck, I said evenly, but at least it seems to throw us a bone every now and then. I seem to have gained a manufacturing-related talent. Give me the raw materials, and whatever I envision just comes to life. That explanation was plausible. If sky survival was weird enough to exist, a crafting talent was nothing out of the ordinary. I passed a glance over the group. What about you all? Any of you notice any newfound abilities? Extra strength? Special skills? They exchanged glances before checking themselves carefully, and then, almost in unison, shook their heads. Nothing. I just feel starving. Same here. I'm lightheaded from hunger. Guess you're the only one in cheat mode, Fei Bao. At that, my suspicions solidified. I was the only one with this kind of power. That actually worked in my favor. It meant it'd be easier to take the lead. Since no one could rely on a cheat code to help me, manpower was going to have to fill in the gaps. I didn't waste time. Crouching down, I turned to Qin Jiejia. Jiejia, quit spacing out. Let's get to work. Her dazed expression snapped into focus. What do you need me to do? Taking charge without hesitation, I began issuing orders systematically. There's too much to do, and I can't handle it solo. Follow my instructions and organize some tasks. Everyone needs clear assignments. Raising a finger, I started with the basics. First, assign someone to fishing. I pointed at the crude fishing rod propped up by the shelter. She frowned slightly, confused as she glanced toward the rod. But where are we supposed to get bait? You can't exactly dig up earthworms by the beach. You don't know how to fish, do you? Several girls nearby frowned. Deep-sea fishing without bait or skill. That's basically a waste of time. You don't need bait, and you don't need to know how, I said with a firm tone. Just toss the line in and wait for a catch. Jia froze. Isn't that just like fishing by waiting? Don't ask why. I interrupted sharply, my gaze silencing any retort. Just do it. I guarantee you'll catch something. Jia clearly had a million questions, but just nodded. All right. Second, I glanced at the two freshly made iron pots. Well, water might be drinkable, but boil some water as a backup whenever necessary. I stopped mid-sentence, sweeping my eyes across the group of women waiting for orders, and lowered my voice. You all have those few days every month. The air suddenly stilled. Faces reddened immediately. A few stifled laughs escaped, their expressions shifting. This man even considered that. On an island where anything could go wrong anytime, even a cup of hot water could feel life-saving. I quickly redirected. Anyway, drinking hot water doesn't hurt. My face darkened. Now for the real priorities. Find natural salt deposits. Look for whitish-gray bird droppings on the intertidal zones. Bird droppings? The women's faces instantly shifted. Are you serious right now, Fei Bao? You expect us to pick that? That's disgusting. I kept my expression stern. No salt, and you'll weaken fast. Dehydration, even shock. If we have no salt, bird guano it is. I gestured with my hands. Wrap it up in several layers of pantyhose, rinse it, then low roast it. It'll yield relatively clean salt. Pantyhose. Everyone glanced down at their torn stockings, their faces falling further. Quit being princesses. I shot down any further protests. This is about survival. If you want to live, just do it. No one argued anymore. The disgust, they'd have to push through. Organize shifts to keep an eye out in the distance. Mark any movement, animal or otherwise. And remember, no one goes wandering alone. Your safety first. Jia hung on every word, the rest nodding along. For now, I was their only lifeline. And lastly, I produced a small bag of potato seeds. Find some loose soil and plant these. Confused looks followed. What about watering or fertilizing? Not necessary. I handed the seeds to Jia. Just dig pits and bury them. Leave it at that. After setting others in motion, I passed her 2 stone axes. One's for self-defense, the other's for work. You handle assigning tasks. Jia gripped the axes tightly, the weight of responsibility palpable, but her gaze only grew steadier. Got it. I picked up a larger axe and headed into the forest. The shelters wouldn't last long. One decent storm, and they'd be ripped apart. If we wanted to survive longer, I'd need to construct something stronger. I found a patch of clay and started digging with the axe. The system I had was helpful, sure, but it didn't relieve me from physical labor. I mixed, smashed, and compressed the clay repeatedly, forcing out air pockets every time until the clay grew denser and more workable. Shape, press, repeat. In no time, rows of rectangular clay bricks were taking form, straight and uniform. My speed was almost absurd. For the average person, just mixing the clay could drain you, and the bricks would easily crack. But in my hands, the clay behaved like it followed orders, molding perfectly no matter how I worked it. As I worked, Jia approached, holding a platter fashioned from a large tree leaf. Fei Bao, eat something first. The platter was piled with cooked shellfish and sea snails. I took a bite, eyebrows lifting. It was salty. There was actually salt. There was a faint fishy aftertaste, but the saltiness was definitely there. Those women may have complained at first, but they hadn't slacked. Sure enough, they extracted salt from the bird droppings. Not bad, I nodded. Her smile lit up brighter. The girls gave it everything. They actually pulled in several big fish. Everyone stunned. Good. I devoured the food in a few bites, wiped my mouth, and resumed work. In these conditions, time waited for no one. A single delay could mean disaster. Even former office workers like my colleagues couldn't afford to hesitate. They were being forced to toughen up. By the time the sun began sinking westwards, I straightened and surveyed the rows of clay bricks laid out before me, easily several hundred. What was even more amazing was the thin, white, hardened crust already forming on the brick surfaces. Normally, bricks took 3 to 5 days to air cure fully, carefully avoiding cracks under the sun. But with the boost from my skill, these were already semi-hardened within hours, and their toughness was superior to regular mud bricks. I picked up one brick, squeezing it experimentally. No give at all. Solid as a rock. This skill is practically cheating. I felt a surge of pride. At this rate, I could have a sturdy, storm-proof brick house in just a few days. If I pushed myself further, building a small fortress here on this deserted island wasn't outside the realm of possibility. Without stopping for a break, I plunged into a nearby bamboo grove. Swift and clean strokes of my axe brought down wrist-thick bamboo stalks. Sweating heavily, I began cutting them down to short 70-centimeter segments. I gathered vines to lash the segments together, laying them parallel between 2 split bamboo poles. Cross-lashing and fire-bending them to form a curve, I quickly assembled a makeshift bamboo sled. No wheels needed. Half of their face was lit softly by the firelight. But luckily, I have you. The words were spoken lightly, but they landed heavily. I didn't respond, just nodded slightly, then lowered my head and continued poking at the fire with a stick. As the night deepened, the chatter by the campfire gradually quieted down. Some people, wrapped in their blankets, had fallen asleep leaning against the trees. Occasionally, I could hear the faint sounds of soft snores and the rustling of the leaves stirred by the wind. The long night felt hard to get through, but it wasn't exactly lonely. My profile was cast into light and shadow, split in half. But thank goodness you're here. As I was about to respond, a sudden sharp scream erupted in the distance, shattering that brief moment of joy. Ah! The girls were so frightened their legs gave out, and they collapsed straight to the ground, their singing abruptly cut off. Everyone turned their heads in unison towards the woods, the same direction the scouting team had just returned from. What happened? Chin Jujia sprang to her feet, her face pale as a sheet. I was already running. After only a few strides, a figure stumbled out of the dark woods. Meow meow meow. Her face was streaked with tears and dirt, her clothes torn as if she'd been fleeing for her life. She tripped and fell at my feet. Hu Chin, Chin, Fei Bao. She was gasping and trembling, her finger pointing desperately back into the depths of the forest. It's bad. Su-ro, she. What about Su-ro? Snake. Meow 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 broke down in tears, her entire body shaking uncontrollably like a leaf in the wind. She got bitten by a snake. The camp immediately burst into chaos. A snake? Are there venomous snakes here? Do you think she's going to die? Fear spread like wildfire through the group. My heart sank. On an isolated island, survival accidents like this were the stuff of nightmares. A snake bite without antivenom could be fatal. My eyes narrowed coldly, and I whirled around, shouting at the group. Nobody run off. Stay by the fire, all of you. My command froze everyone in their tracks. Chin Jujia, watch them. Make sure nobody leaves. Grabbing my stone axe, I bolted toward the dark woods. Meow 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 lead the way. Scared as she was, Meow didn't dare delay. Wiping her tears, she forced herself upright and led me into the darkness. The forest was poorly lit. I pushed through the undergrowth and soon spotted Su-ro trembling beneath a tree. Her face was covered in dirt, and her hair stuck to her face. She bit her lip to hold back tears, but the moment I approached, she broke down. Fei Bao, she choked out through her sobs. I crouched down and gently patted her back, feeling how she trembled with each touch. Don't be scared. I'm here. Su-ro clutched my arm, pointing shakily at the disheveled collar of her shirt. Beneath her collarbone, there was a swollen red mark, a very distinct bite, and it was in an embarrassingly awkward spot. My face darkened. Did you see what bit you? A snake. Fei Bao, am I going to die? I don't want to die. Su-ro sobbed, clutching at me like her life depended on it. My chest tightened. The most critical thing about snake bites was determining venom. We needed to figure out if it had been a poisonous bite right away. I called over my shoulder to Meow Meow. Come here. Look at the bite. Is it 2 puncture marks or a row of teeth? Meow Meow Meow's face was as pale as a sheet. She leaned forward, her voice trembling. There's a lot, tiny rows of them. I can't tell how deep. I didn't hesitate, pulling her back. I'll take a look. The instant I moved closer, Su-Ro's face flushed red, and she tried to shrink away. Don't move. I gripped her shoulder, my eyes fixed dead on the wound. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, giving me a better view. The wound hadn't turned black or necrotic. The swelling wasn't spreading out rapidly. Most importantly, the bite was composed of rows of tiny teeth marks. Frightening, yes, and bloody, but significantly lacking the life-threatening two deep punctures hallmarks of a venomous snake. Rows of small teeth marks. I murmured to myself, and relief washed over me like a wave. I met Su-Ro's tear-filled eyes. What did the snake look like? Was it triangular or round-headed? What color was it? Blinking through her tears, Su-Ro tried to remember. Round-headed. Yellow. No, brown. And it had little dots, spots all over it. I swear it was a snake. I exhaled slowly. Rows of small teeth, round head, brown body with speckled scales. It had to be non-venomous. Which direction did it go? Still trembling, Su-Ro pointed to some ferns not far away. I walked over, and within a few steps, I spotted it slithering through the dried leaves. About 60 to 70 centimeters long, dark brown-yellow, with coarse, sandpaper-like scales. A file snake. I muttered under my breath, my nerves finally settling. Ugly and aggressive, sure, but harmless. Returning to Su-Ro, I softened my tone. It's fine, just a surface wound. We'll disinfect it, and you'll be okay. Not fatal. The moment I said, not fatal, Su-Ro seemed to collapse in on herself, trying to stand but failing. I didn't waste any more time. Without a word, I bent down and scooped her up, carrying her in my arms. Ah, she gasped, reflexively wrapping her arms around my neck. Let's go. Back to camp. I called to Meow Meow Meow, who followed behind us at a small jog. Su-Ro sat dazed in my arms. It was her first time being this close to me. At the office, she had always kept her distance, cold and professional, and our interactions were strictly limited to work matters. Up until now, she'd thought I was just an unremarkable background character. She looked up at my jawline under the moonlight, sharp and defined. High nose bridge, strong brow bones, unwavering eyes fixed on the path ahead, and a clenched jaw that radiated focused determination. Sweat dripped from my temple, landing on her arm, startling her with its heat. Su-Ro's heartbeat quickened out of nowhere. Was this really the same Su Fei she worked with back at the company? In this treacherous, pitch-black night, I was like a moving wall, solid and unyielding. For the first time, I had given her a sense of security she'd never felt before. Her face burned fiercely, and she couldn't tell if it was from embarrassment or frightened or something else. She buried her face in the crook of my neck, clutching me tighter and tighter. I could feel her getting closer, her warm breath tickling my neck. But I didn't have time to think too much. My steps quickened. I just wanted to get back to the bamboo shelter and take care of the wound immediately. Even if it's a non-venomous snake, we can't delay. Wild snakes have filthy mouths, and a secondary infection out here could be deadly. Before long, the faint glow of the fire from our bamboo shelter came into view. As soon as we stepped into the campsite, the women came rushing over. How is she? Where did it bite her? Was it venomous? I gently laid Su-Ro down on the clean straw bedding Meow Meow had prepared, telling everyone to pipe down. No need to panic, it wasn't a venomous snake. Quickly, I took charge, issuing orders with a steady voice. Boil some water, make sure it's fully boiled. Bring clean cloth to help clean up her wound. Upon hearing it was a non-venomous snake, everyone finally exhaled in relief. Su-Ro leaned languidly against Meow Meow's chest as Meow Meow quietly comforted her. Her face was still flushed, but her gaze kept drifting toward me. The immediate danger had passed, but the aftershock of fear started to settle in. That's when the rest of the group remembered. We're on an island full of unknowns. And yes, there are snakes here. They instinctively scooted closer to the fire, nestling near me as though staying far from me meant the dark would swallow them whole. I watched their pale, nervous faces flickering in the firelight and felt a tightness in my chest. I threw another log onto the flames. This one's on me. My voice was steady but heavy. I let my guard down after surveying the area the first day. Didn't see any signs of large predators and got complacent. I should have warned you all to be cautious of snakes. I'm sorry for scaring everyone. Chin Jejia, sitting across from me calmly stoking the fire, looked up. The light softened her expression. Su Fei, don't blame yourself like that. You've already done so much for us. All of us, 17 women, are relying on you for food, shelter, literally everything. You're not a god. You can't anticipate everything. Several of the other girls chimed in eagerly to back her up. Yeah, Fei Bao, this isn't on you. If it weren't for you, we'd have collapsed from hunger ages ago. Qin Jija pressed on, trying to handle the energy in the group. We need to start taking responsibility too. We can't just push everything onto you. We're adults. We should have some basic sense of danger for ourselves. I raised my hand to cut her off. No, the blame is mine. There's no excuse. My tone was firm. I'll be more vigilant from now on. In the meantime, don't wander off into thick grass or unknown areas. Stay where it's clear, and we'll be fine. The mood dipped into a somber silence. I scanned their fire-lit faces, reddened and full of unease, and my chest tightened further. Out here, losing morale was deadlier than any snake. Can't sleep? I asked, my tone lightening deliberately. Let me tell you a story. I cleared my throat and shifted in my seat to start. Tell it. Tell it. The more nervous girls instantly perked up and inched closer. Having someone talking chased away the oppressive stillness of the night. I began with a straight face, but my storytelling quickly veered off course. So, that scholar got lost at night and stumbled into a widow's house. I even gestured for emphasis, my antics growing more exaggerated as the tale got more ludicrous. Someone's cheeks flushed red first, but then a stifled chuckle escaped. Uffed. And that was all it took. A chorus of laughter followed almost immediately. Fei Bao, you're awful. What kind of ridiculous story is that? Though they teased me, their swats at my shoulder were light, playful, without a trace of frustration. I derailed their tension with a few risque jokes, and just like that, the heaviness dissipated. Even Su Ro, nestled in Miao Miao's arms, couldn't help but crack a smile. She shot me a quick glare, her expression tinged with coyness. Her look only made me laugh harder, my voice echoing far into the night. On this desolate island, a bit of laughter, admittedly a little inappropriate, had become our best medicine. The work didn't stop. For days, it was digging holes, mixing soil, pouring water, smearing walls, my hands growing calloused from it all. I only got faster, each shovelful overturning earth like it had already made peace with its fate, piling up neatly. Su Ro and Miao Miao worked nearby, mimicking me carefully. Though clumsy in their movements, they were serious, their faces smudged with dirt, but their eyes brimming with determination. Su Ro hesitated, her voice soft. Fei Bao, how deep should we dig this part? Miao Miao gestured at a line scratched into the dirt, asking, does this edge need to be wider? I didn't get impatient. I worked while explaining, even stepping in to adjust their movements directly when needed. I knew this wasn't just about getting work done. It was about bringing people together, inspiring a sense of control and community. Even our meals began to improve noticeably. Golden potatoes were unearthed from the soil, washed, and roasted directly. The aroma alone was enough to make everyone salivate. We weren't surviving on sheer seafood anymore. The sight of those roasted potatoes brightened everyone's expression. With our stockpile of harvested salt holding steady, life was gradually finding a rhythm. At the very least, for now, things seemed to be looking up. But I didn't let them venture into unknown territories anymore. The island was too dangerous. I wouldn't take that risk. The mud and stone kiln was a major success. After repeated firings, it hardened like iron. I stuffed it with dry branches and leaves, lighting a fire that roared to life with cracks and pops. Once the system delivered coal, I fed it eagerly into the furnace, and the heat intensity skyrocketed. The flames shifted from orange-red to a blue-tinged white that radiated a ferocious 1,800 degrees. With this kiln up and running, I could finally make real tools and weapons. Wouldn't lack anything any longer. I hammered softened metal with a stone mallet until it neared perfection. One by one, axes, spears, arrowheads, and machetes took form. I distributed them among the women for self-defense, better armed than helpless in an emergency. Thanks to skills like national craftsmanship and mastery proficiency, my progress in constructing brick houses sped up immensely. The first house was a trial, full of adjustments and tests. By the third and fourth, though, it felt like I was on autopilot. The seams tighter, the structure more solid. Some days later, there stood 4 finished brick homes. The scent of fresh bricks and damp soil filled the salty sea wind. I claimed a small room for myself. The other 3 were designated for the 17 women. Finally, we no longer had to squeeze into shanties. They could sleep in peace at night. After settling them in, I ventured alone further into the island, fully geared, bow on my back, iron arrows and hatchet at my side, machete in hand. That day, I circled to the other side of the island. Pushing through dense shrubs, I stumbled upon a grove of mulberry trees. The branches were weighed down with fuzzy white silkworm cocoons, clustered together like strings of pearls. A spark ignited in me at once. Carrying back an armful of the cocoons to the campsite, I gave my command, "Boil the water in the pot." The women immediately sprang into action. With a large pot on the fire, I ordered them to strip the cocoons. Those pristine, snow-white cocoons were tossed into the boiling water, tumbling and swirling. I grabbed a long wooden stick and began stirring. As soon as the hot water seeped in, the saracen began to dissolve, and tiny silk threads emerged from the cocoons, getting thicker the more I stirred, wrapping tightly around the stick. "Is that silk thread?" Chin Jeja leaned in, her eyes sparkling with wonder. Suro reached out but hesitated, afraid the delicate threads might snap at the slightest touch. Their awe reassured me even more. The skills the system had granted me felt endless. Supporting these 17 women, or even more, wasn't even a concern. One step built upon the next, reeling, weaving, constructing a loom. It felt like a predetermined path had been laid out for me. The most outrageous part? The accelerated cultivation feature. Rice paddies, apple orchards, peanut plants. They all shot from seed to harvest in 3 days. Watching fields turn vibrant green and trees sag under the weight of ripe fruit, all I could think was one word: absurd. Chin Jejia and the others were in utter shock and disbelief at first, but soon their skepticism morphed into pure admiration. They couldn't stop ogling the pot as the cocoons boiled, mouths slightly open. "Feibao, how do you know how to do everything? Teach us," they pleaded. "We want to help too." I didn't hold back. As I worked, I taught them, silk threads can make clothes, and we can't just rely on one kind of food. Vegetables and fruits must balance the diet. When they saw the crops mature in just 3 days, all 17 of my female colleagues burst into a chaotic uproar. "Feibao, I feel like we're all useless here," someone murmured, voice tinged with self-deprecation. A chorus of agreement followed, certain awkwardness and anxiety hanging in the air. They were worried about falling behind. Without a word, I grabbed one of them to help. I showed them how to peel cocoons, how to use the loom, how to identify edible plants, and how to harvest those crazily fast-growing crops. Slowly but surely, the tasks were divided up. As everyone settled into their respective roles, I no longer had to shoulder everything alone. In the shared toil of daily work, we grew closer and stronger as a group. One day, I made a massive batch of stir-fried shredded potato rice, crispy and fragrant. The long-forgotten taste had everyone eating until their plates were scraped clean. On the following morning, as the humid sea breeze stirred, I woke naturally. Kneeling in the sandy ground, I used a branch to sketch diagrams. My mind was turning gears constantly, and it wasn't long before the system unveiled something new: mechanical assembly. If I wanted to bring machinery to life, this was the way. I started with rough schematics, simplifying and refining as I went. By the time my branch paused, a detailed mechanical blueprint was etched into the sand before me. Satisfied, I smoothed out the excess marks and exhaled deeply. The design was locked in my mind. Every slot, every joint, every structural balance crystal clear. Skill unlocked. Mechanical assembly. It felt like this ability was hardwired into me. A fleeting idea could solidify into a polished design in mere moments. Guided by the master craftsman boost, the tribe's development speed was fast-tracking at a surreal pace, like someone had jammed the accelerator. I had barely erected a basic wooden workbench when I grabbed wet clay and started crafting. In what felt like minutes, a clay bowl materialized in my hands. Then a second, a third. Containers, cups, various pottery forms stacked neatly beside me, like an impromptu production line. Suro noticed I was dripping with sweat and thoughtfully approached with half a coconut shell filled with water. She held it out carefully as I looked up, hands too caked in mud to take it. Suddenly, she tilted the shell to my lips, feeding me the water directly. The air shifted, an indefinable tension settling between us. Mischief sparked within me. I deliberately gulped too fast, choking a little. Cough, cough. Suro panicked, setting the coconut shell down quickly and patting my back. "Are you okay, Feibao?" Yeah, I'm fine." I reassured her between coughs, stealing glances at her all the while. Her expression was stripped of any embarrassment, replaced entirely by worry. Somehow, that genuine moment of care sent a deeper warmth through me than any bit of shyness could. She stared at the row of clay pieces, wide-eyed. "You really can do everything." Tilting her head in thought, she asked, "Don't we need a kiln for this? I've seen pottery being made in city art museums before." "Exactly," I replied casually, tossing her a compliment. "You've got a good eye." After taking a short break, I brought out scissors and needles I had fashioned earlier. Measuring the silk cloth against myself, I estimated the dimensions and went straight to cutting. Rip, rip, the sound of fabric tearing brought Su-ro and Meow Meow running. Both froze in place, their expressions stuck in disbelief. Measuring, stitching, threading, every movement was fluid, seamless, natural. Even I had to admit it was impressive. From mechanical engineering to pottery and now tailoring, it seemed there was nothing I couldn't handle. Su-ro and Meow Meow were outright flabbergasted. How on earth did I even master needlework? Though the first shirt and pants I made weren't as quick to complete, the real shock had already set in. I spent quite a bit of time on it. But soon, my speed really started to take off. The second set, the third set, each one took hardly 5 minutes. Before long, I had neatly laid out 17 sets of simple yet sturdy women's clothing. Finally, I made a set of well-fitting men's clothes for myself. After all these days, I could finally toss those leaves aside. Wearing them any longer was practically no different from streaking. Wow, new clothes. The commotion drew over a dozen women who rushed to pick through the pile, chattering nonstop. Before I knew it, they were arguing. "The sleeves are a little too long. These pants are too short for me. The waist is way too wide." I cleared my throat and cut straight to the point. "I don't know your measurements. If you don't want to make do, then I'll have to measure each of you individually." As soon as I finished speaking, the whole group fell silent. It wasn't like I was trying to take advantage of anyone. It's just that without any measuring tape on this island, the only way to make properly fitting clothes was to measure by hand and mark with string. The women exchanged hesitant glances. Having someone measure them that closely made everyone feel awkward. "I'll go first." Su-ro stepped forward to break the tension. I nodded and asked her to stand straight. Trying my best to act professional, I began, but as soon as my hands touched the curves beneath the fabric, my heart skipped a beat. Bust, waist, hips. Each measurement made it harder to stay composed. As soon as I finished the last one, I immediately stepped back, taking a deep breath. My fingertips still seemed to carry her warmth, and even I could tell something wasn't right with myself. If I kept this up, I might burn out from sheer embarrassment before anything else. That'll do." I handed Su-ro a vine with measurement marks. "You all can measure each other and give me the numbers. I'll make adjustments." Someone let out a giggle, and soon the whole group burst into laughter. "Wow, Fei Bao's shy. Look, his face is all red. Don't be scared, sweetie. We promise not to bite." Their teasing grew bolder and bolder, and even though Meow Meow was still looking confused and clueless, most of them were in on the joke. I scratched my nose and quickly changed the subject. I glanced down at everyone's feet. I'd been barefoot all this time, running across the beach and through the forest, so my soles had already toughened up with thick calluses. But my female colleagues' shoes were all over the place, each woman wearing something different. Most of the shoes they brought weren't suitable for a deserted island. High heels, canvas sneakers, and running shoes had disintegrated after just a few days, and they were filthy beyond hope of cleaning. I sighed and muttered, "Man, I'm basically your dad and your mom at this point." The moment the words left my mouth, the women roared with laughter. "Daddy Fei Bao, Mommy Su Fei." Someone rubbed her foot and called out, "Daddy, make us some shoes already. I'm dying here." I rolled my eyes. Fine, I hear you, my dear daughters." Making shoes was going to be another tough battle. I scanned the group and pointed at Qin Jiejia. "Jiejia, you come here." She walked over, slipping off her nearly destroyed high heels. I crouched down and held her foot, checking its shape and measuring her size while mentally planning the shoe sole structure. Still, my eyes couldn't help but wander back to her small feet. Qin Jiejia curled her toes and gave me a suggestive smile. "Like what you see, Fei Bao." I muttered a half-hearted response, "It's all right," while unconsciously swallowing. That was it. The group erupted. The women started cheering. "What about mine? Take a look at mine too. Make me something cute and comfy." A few even shoved their feet closer, and the air quickly filled with all kinds of smells. I was about ready to lose it. Struggling to keep my cool, I repeated to myself, stay focused on the structure. Just focus on the work. Using scissors, I started cutting shoe soles from fabric and thick tree bark fibers, matching them to various foot sizes. I cut out 80 pieces in total, 2 soles each for 40 shoes. I then stacked 10 layers per sole, sewing them tightly together. The stitching was so dense, it looked like a web. I called Meow Meow and Sue Row over. Watch closely and remember this. You'll need to teach the others. I can't be making these forever. The two nodded earnestly. For cushioning, I sandwiched dried grass and soft fibrous material between 3 layers of sewn soles. A crude but solid foundation. Though the materials were far from ideal, the soles were thick, durable, and cushioned, a lifesaver under these conditions. With the soles complete, I stitched cloth onto them for the shoe uppers, finishing a simple but comfortable pair. Running on autopilot, I repeated this process again and again until I'd made 18 pairs, including one for myself. After the final stitch, my vision went dark. Without a specialized skill backing me, I seriously thought I might keel over from exhaustion. Flopping onto the ground, I sprawled out completely. The new shoes lined up neatly in front of me, and the women cheered around them. As tired as I was, I had to admit, I'd seen way more of their feet than I ever wanted to. I quipped, "Don't even ask me to make any other kinds of covers. You'll just have to deal." Cue another wave of laughter. Nearly 20 days had passed since we landed on this island, and I was finally catching a break. For the past 20 days, I'd been running myself to the ground, fighting tooth and nail with survival itself. Today was the first time I could actually breathe. Sprawled out on the sunlit beach, the heat seeped into me, melting away the stress and exhaustion bit by bit. In modern society, the line between wearing clothes or not is massive. Being nearly naked, the constant sense of shame hangs over you, making everything you do feel awkward. Once you put on proper clothes, though, even if it's just a few scraps of cloth sewn together, that invisible rope loosens and a person stands up straighter. Not far away, the other women were the same. After changing into simple clothes, their work attitude shifted entirely. I turned my head to look. They were wearing the clothes I made, each busy with their own tasks. Foraging, preparing food, spinning silk, weaving cloth, crafting clay into pottery, collecting firewood, starting fires, extracting salt from bird guano, planting potatoes, apples, peanuts. Everything was clearly organized. The clearer the division of labor, the more this small team started to feel like a functioning group of people rather than refugees on the brink of dispersing. And as the core of this group, at least for now, I could legitimately take a break. Other people stuck on deserted islands would be thanking the heavens for finding a cave. Meanwhile, we were already close to setting up a clay brick house. It's crude, sure, but it gives that reassuring feeling of we can survive this. I closed my eyes, humming an off-key tune, feeling absolutely content. A beautiful setting, a good life, and a team of capable people, even though they were all currently working hard. I glanced again at the figures sweating away in the distance and couldn't help but let out a satisfied noise. This is the life. But just then, a hurried figure broke through my serenity. Chin Jejia stormed toward me, her face dark, pulling along Song Yeon, the production line manager, at a brisk pace. "Fei Bao, there's something off about her. You should talk to her yourself," Chin Jejia said. I pushed myself off the sand, brushing it off my hands. "What's wrong?" I asked. Looking over at Song Yeon, my gaze lingered on her for a moment. At the office, she always had that classic beauty look. Now, in her coarse handmade clothes, hair casually tied up, she still couldn't hide her elegance. If anything, it made her seem more delicate. But what her face showed now wasn't elegance. It was pure fear and uncertainty. Her voice trembled as she spoke. I think I can see further now." "See further?" I frowned. "You mean like better eyesight?" I said nonchalantly, sending Chin Jejia a look as if to say, "Why bother me with this?" Chin Jejia anxiously tugged at Song Yeon's arm. "Explain it more clearly," she urged. Song Yeon took a deep breath and raised her hand, pointing toward the depths of the island. "I can see to the other side of the island. Through those woods, I can see a large beast." The relaxed expression on my face froze. I followed the direction she pointed, but all I saw was layers of dense forest, bamboo groves, mulberry trees, greenery stacked upon greenery. Beyond 100 meters, visibility was blocked entirely, never mind seeing through it. But a chilling possibility surged into my mind. I sat up straight, my tone serious now. What kind of beast? What does it look like? Black or white? How big? Be specific. Song Yan's description came quickly, as if she were simply reading from an image burned into her mind. Like a wolf, completely black, with long, thick fur. It was digging at the ground under a large tree. She even gestured the beast's size with her hands while keeping her finger pointed firmly toward that same direction. Her details were so vivid, so specific, I had no choice but to take her seriously. If she were lying, there's no way she could fabricate such an elaborate story with matching details so quickly. I narrowed my eyes at Song Yan, my voice low. This eyesight of yours, has it always been like this, or did it just happen out of nowhere? It started this morning. She answered immediately, her voice shaky. When I stepped outside, I instinctively looked far out. That's when I noticed I could see individual leaf patterns on distant trees. Then I saw, well, that thing. My mind raced as I kept a stern expression. Could it be that Heaven's survival was more than just dumping people into a hopeless situation to fend for themselves? Could it also awaken certain abilities in those who survive? But then, why her? Why Song Yan and not anyone else? Like, say, Qin Jejia? She seemed perfectly normal. Qin Jejia stepped closer, adding soberly, I already asked around. Everyone else, including me, doesn't have anything like that. Right now, it's just her. That actually made me even more uneasy. If it's just her, then this is no universal phenomenon. It's either random or something is different about her specifically. But I had no time for deeper analysis because the immediate issue demanded attention. Was the large beast she described real? If there really was something like that in the area, our camp wasn't safe. Not even close. All right, you two stay here and don't go anywhere, I ordered coldly. I turned toward the clay brick house to gear up. I grabbed my sturdy bow, slung a quiver of sharp arrows over my shoulder, sheathed a short-handled iron axe at my waist, and hefted a large machete. Fully armed. Returning to the beach, I glanced once more toward the direction Song Yan had pointed. Without a word, I stepped into the dense forest. It didn't take long for me to find tracks near a thicket, fresh paw prints, and a few black hairs snagged on thorns. Immediately, I lightened my steps, sticking to the shadows as I followed the trail. Not far in, I spotted it through a gap in the leaves. A wolf, completely black, not a single stray hair of another color. Its build was lean, its muscles taut and defined. It was exactly as Song Yan had described. I stopped and pressed myself against a thick tree trunk, my heart sinking. A wolf on this island? That wasn't just unusual, it was outright impossible. But then again, nothing on this island made sense. The mulberry trees, the bamboo groves, the whole setup was designed to defy logic. The biggest absurdity was getting thrown from the modern world into this crazy survival simulation to begin with. At this point, what wasn't absurd? Still, my concern wasn't just this one wolf. Wolves don't act alone. Where there's one, there are usually more. Only one, or maybe a whole pack. Just as the thought crossed my mind, the black wolf suddenly stopped, turned its head back, and locked its ghostly green eyes on where I was hidden. It sniffed the air sharply, a low, menacing growl vibrating in its throat. Its body lowered, muscles tensed, sharp fangs bared with no attempt to hide its killing intent. I was exposed. My heart sank. Running would mean death. It would trigger its full hunting instinct. Backing away slowly wasn't an option either. If I led it back to the camp, the women would be in grave danger. I had no choice but to kill it right here. But were there more wolves nearby? My eyes darted around quickly. Apart from the sound of leaves rustling in the breeze, there was nothing. For now, it seemed this one was alone. The next second, the black wolf lost its patience. With a powerful push from its hind legs, it launched at me like a shadowy blur. **T. I cursed, rolling to dodge the attack and simultaneously pulling the machete from my waist. The wolf landed, recovered instantly, and turned back with a snarl, inching closer. I gripped the hatchet in my left hand and the machete in my right, steadying my stance. As long as it was just this one, I wasn't necessarily at a disadvantage. My only fear was that this was just a scout for the pack. The black wolf became more cautious, stopping its direct pounce and circling me slowly, searching for an opening. The air between us grew taut as man and beast stared each other down in the clearing. Suddenly, it struck. It pretended to charge from the left, tricking me into shifting my weight, and then darted in fast from the right, jaws aiming directly for my neck. Too fast. My pupils dilated as I instinctively leaned back, swinging my machete to block. It wasn't fast enough. I felt a searing pain on the right side of my neck. Its claws had grazed me, leaving a streak of blood streaming out. In that split second, a strange, almost comical robotic voice resonated in my mind. Skill unlocked. Combat. Just FING do it. Hand to hand. Weapons. 1v1. 1v many. You name it, you'll nail it. Wait, what? A flood of combat techniques and instincts poured into my brain, snapping my once clumsy movements into something fluid and sharp. As the wolf lunged again, I no longer stayed on the defensive. I sidestepped its attack, the machete slicing through its hind leg in one swift motion. The wolf let out a shrill cry, stumbling on its injured leg. Without missing a beat, I closed in and brought the hatchet down on its skull. There was a sickening crunch, and the wolf spasmed twice before going still. Breathing heavily, I reached for my neck when a rustling noise came from behind the bushes. The sound was too urgent to be made by just one creature. Anxiety shot through me as I stiffened, blade raised and ready. My eyes locked on the foliage. Was it a wolf pack? Or maybe even someone else on this island? Feibao? Is that you? A familiar voice cut through the tension. It was Qin Jejia, sounding worried. The undergrowth parted as she emerged, gripping an iron spear. Behind her was Meow Meow Meow, struggling to carry a stone axe. Further behind, Su Ro, Jiang Nina, Song Yan, and the rest all filed in, each holding whatever weapons or tools they could find. Wooden sticks, rocks, even a burning firebrand. Hands trembling, but eyes resolute. They spread out cautiously at first, but upon seeing the dead wolf, they collectively exhaled. Qin Jejia rushed toward me, anxious. Are you okay? I opened my mouth to respond, but Su Ro's shriek interrupted. You're bleeding from your neck. The next second, all of them started talking at once, crowding me like I was on the brink of death. Let me see that. How could you get hurt like this? We should have come sooner. Some of them even started crying. Qin Jejia's eyes turned red, her hands hovering near my wound, but too scared to touch it. Meow 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 kept muttering about needing to bandage it up. Completely surrounded, I couldn't move an inch, and it all felt a bit absurd. It was just a scratch, but they acted like I was about to keel over. They half-dragged, half-supported me back to the camp. Holding back my frustration, I finally blurted out, "Didn't I tell you all to stay at camp?" I seized the moment to scold them, my voice edged with anger. What if there were more wolves, an entire pack? All of you rushing out here would have been a death sentence. I sounded harsh, but inside, I felt guilty. We were worried about you. Qin Jejia's eyes brimmed with tears. You went to check for wolves and didn't come back for so long. How could we just sit there and wait? Exactly. Meow 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 chimed in, gritting her teeth. We're a team. Why should you fight alone? Su Ro wiped her tears, staring hard at me. We're not co-workers anymore. We're family now. We need to survive together. Yeah, we're family. We can't keep letting you take all the risks. Their remarks came one after another, leaving no room for argument. Any scolding I had in mind dissolved instantly. My chest grew warm, and I could only let them help me back. Back at camp, my serious injury was treated like a major event. They meticulously patched me up with clean bandages, even though the bleeding had nearly stopped. Early the next morning, I prepared to return alone to the site of the fight. I couldn't leave the potential threat of a wolf pack unresolved. Our camp's safety depended on it. I'm going alone, I told them firmly. No way. Qin Jejia was the first to object. If you're going, we're going too, Su Ro said even more adamantly. Meow 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 and Song Yan remained silent, but gave unwavering looks of determination. I had no choice but to relent, bringing Qin Jejia, Su Ro, Meow Meow Meow, and Song Yan with me. Before leaving, I gave them repeated instructions to stay close, but not too close, and to run at the first sign of danger without looking back. They nodded in agreement, but deep down, I knew none of them would actually leave me behind if things went south. We tread carefully to the scene of yesterday's battle. The dead wolf still lay there, its blood drying in the dirt. Darkness. The unsettling silence around me was eerie. I sighed in relief, thinking it was just a lone wolf I encountered. As I was about to step forward and start skinning it, another wolf emerged from the nearby bushes. Black fur, same size, same movements. It was nearly identical to the one I encountered yesterday. Even the way it locked its gaze on its prey was like a carbon copy. I froze in place, my brain buzzing loudly. What the hell is this? It felt like some kind of respawn spot, like it was deliberately set up for people to harvest pelts. But this thing stood there alive and breathing, baring its fangs, and the oppressive feeling hit me like a punch to the face. Jujia and the others spotted it too. They tensed immediately, their grips on their weapons turning their knuckles white. I raised a hand, signaling them not to act rashly. Gripping my machete, I stepped forward to face the new black wolf. Using the strategies I had figured out yesterday, along with my newly acquired skills, I managed to take the wolf down in just a few moves. Within minutes, another black wolf collapsed into a pool of blood. I stared at the two identical wolf corpses, feeling more and more unsettled the longer I looked at them. Without wasting any more time thinking, I swiftly skinned both pelts, making sure they were intact. Skill acquired, skinning. I've picked up so many skills at this point, I don't even bother keeping track anymore. Wolf pelts are valuable commodities. You can make a ton of useful gear out of them. But the strange occurrences didn't stop there. Every day for the next few days, at the exact same time and in the exact same spot, one identical black wolf would appear. Never more, never less. It was like someone had flipped a switch on a timer. At first, I was confused and shocked. Eventually, I became numb to it. That's when it hit me. This island doesn't follow any normal rules. This whole place, created under some simulated sky, was fated to be full of bizarre events. As I held up another freshly skinned wolf pelt, I glanced toward the horizon. Something deep in my gut told me, spawning wolves is just the beginning. Today it's wolves. Tomorrow, it could be tigers, lions, or even beasts I've never heard of. Sure, a machete or a spear might hold up for now, but against something stronger and meaner? That's just a death sentence. I live by one principle: plan ahead, or you won't live for long. I need to stockpile aces up my sleeve, something that hits hard and guarantees survival. I left the camp and headed toward the forest and the base of the mountains in search of water. Soon enough, about a kilometer away, I stumbled upon a small stream. I didn't waste time. I dug some pits, crafted some clay, and built 3 earthen furnaces in a triangular arrangement. They looked rough on the outside, but the interiors and ventilation systems were carefully designed, clearly built to endure high temperatures. Once the furnaces were done, I headed back to camp and found Jujia managing the others as they worked. "Jujia, come here." I motioned her over. She wiped her hands and approached, her expression curious. Pointing toward the stream, I said, "I set up 3 furnaces over there. I'm going to need manpower for the next few days. Assign a few people to rotate shifts. All they need to do is handle the grunt work." Jujia paused, surprised. "You're building furnaces? What are you going to do, smelt iron?" I didn't elaborate. "Something like that. You'll know when the time comes. Just pick people who are strong and follow directions." "Got it," she replied crisply, always quick on the uptake. Soon enough, the crew was assembled. The first group, including Jujia, consisted of 5 or 6 women. They gathered around my crude furnaces, scratching their heads in confusion. "Feibao, what are these mud lumps for?" one of them finally asked. "Fire," I replied curtly. I wasn't much for words. I tossed iron, ore, and charcoal into the first furnace and then turned to the women. "See that over there?" I pointed to a large, makeshift bellows strapped together with wood and animal hide. 2 people per team, take turns pulling it. No slacking. Work hard. The women didn't understand, but they also didn't dare question me. They quickly split into teams and got to work. Whoosh whoosh. The bellows filled the furnace with powerful gusts of air, stoking the charcoal until it burned fiercely. Flames licked up from the furnace opening, and the heat became almost unbearable. I kept my eyes on the observation window, watching the earth shift and change. The first batch was for molds. As the iron ore softened and melted into molten iron, I ladled it out with a long-handled clay crucible and poured it into cylindrical molds made from damp clay. With a hiss and a puff of scalding steam, the first piece quickly cooled into shape. The second batch was even more intense. This time, I added carbon, manganese, and silicon, materials that looked like crushed rocks to others, but which I treated like precious lifelines. From this batch, I forged 2 ring-shaped molds with holes. The third furnace repeated the same process, another ring-shaped mold. With the molds ready, the real challenge began. "Gather around," I called out, pulling a scorching red iron billet from the furnace and slamming it onto a large boulder I had repurposed as an anvil. "Grab hammers and take turns. Wherever I tell you to hit, you hit it. Don't hold back." I shoved a heavy iron hammer into Qin Jiejia's hands. Hit it? She blinked in disbelief, as did the others. Yes, hit it. Don't drag your feet. Once it cools, it's useless. I barked, urgency in my tone. Qin Jiejia gritted her teeth and swung the hammer with all her strength, crashing it down onto the glowing iron billet. Clang! Sparks flew. Next, I shouted. The second woman stepped up and swung. Clang! Panting heavily, one of them couldn't help but ask, Fei Bao, what are we even making? Stop asking. Just keep going. I said without looking up, flipping the red-hot billet over with tongs to expose a new surface for them to hammer. They had no choice but to follow my lead. Asterisk clang, 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 asterisk. The sound of hammers striking metal echoed through the streamside. One by one, they took their turns, arms shaking from exhaustion, sweat soaking through their clothes. The more they hammered, the more uncertain they felt. Could something useful really come out of this chaotic mess? Yet, I kept glaring like a hawk, leaving no room for slacking. To anyone lagging behind, I had zero tolerance. This wasn't the time for softness. This wasn't just forging weapons. It was survival. Crazy. No machine tools, no equipment. This is impossible to make. But in my mind, it's as if there's a precise blueprint carved there. Every step, every detail locked to perfection. All I need is for them to follow orders, hammer this chunk of steel into the shape I specify. Every strike I make, every command I give, is as precise as a machine. The rhythm doesn't falter for even a second. The steel, originally as thick as a wrist, is repeatedly hammered, stretched, and compressed. Before long, I've forged a metal rod about 10 centimeters long, with a diameter locked perfectly at 13 millimeters. Its surface is covered in hammer marks, yet there's an indescribable touch of precision to it. Stop, I say. I toss the metal rod back into the furnace for more heating, then pull out a spiral-grooved mold from furnace 2. Inside, the walls of the mold are etched with winding spiral grooves. Keep hammering. Once the metal rod is red-hot, it's fitted into the mold, and the women continue hammering as I direct. Clang, clang, clang. Each hammer strike deepens the spiral grooves, pressing them firmly into the metal. 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns. The rifling is forged like this, step by step. Several of them gawk, slack-jawed, beginning to realize what I'm making. I move to furnace 3. There, I melt down a different mix of special alloy. The newly formed steel rod is carefully coated with the molten alloy using a meticulous technique. Then it's hammered again. This step enhances its toughness and durability. After repeated quenching and forging, what finally emerges from the hammering is the rough shape of a gun barrel, coated in cold metallic sheen, and with rifling clearly visible inside. By now, the women can no longer hold back. Su Fei, what is this? A gun barrel, right? This has to be a gun barrel. You're not seriously making a gun, are you? Building a gun by hand. Are you insane? I hold the still warm barrel, squint slightly, and toss out a casual response. You've heard of Barrett, haven't you? Something like that. Those words hit their heads like a thunderclap. A Barrett, the infamous heavy sniper rifle, the kind of monster you see in movies that can blow through someone with a single shot. What I'm building here isn't just any gun. It's an anti-material sniper rifle. And with the hardest part, the barrel, now completed, the remaining components feel trivial in comparison. The trigger mechanism, bolt, firing pin, and stock. Each piece is hammered out with the most basic of tools, yet with shockingly absurd precision. Once the body of the gun is finished, it's time to work on the ammunition. Refining copper, extracting tungsten ores, crafting tungsten steel armor-piercing rounds. The precision knowledge stored deep in a master craftsman's database lays out the entire manufacturing process as clear as day. Even the trickiest part, the propellant powder, is no problem for someone with gunpowder skills like me. I roll up my sleeves and dive straight into a chemistry experiment. Using sodium carbonate, I fashion a makeshift setup to blow my own dropper tubes and distillation equipment from scratch. With scavenged raw materials, meticulous distillation, and purification, I stubbornly grind my way through until the propellant powder for the bullets is done. The last part, the sights, comes together with custom ground quartz lenses for an adjustable scope. As I look at the small pile of components scattered across a rock, still unassembled, I almost can't stop myself from shouting, "This is insane. Your Iron Man nonsense has nothing on this," I mutter to myself. Try coming to a deserted island and building a sniper rifle from scratch with your bare hands. ammo included. I suppress my excitement and adopt a more serious expression. Calmly, methodically, I begin assembling the weapon I've painstakingly created. Barrel to receiver. Slide the bolt. Fits like butter. The magazine locks in with a solid, satisfying click. Finally, the handmade yet fully functional scope glides seamlessly onto the rail. In front of everyone now lies a heavy sniper rifle. It exudes a raw, brutal aesthetic, with hard angles and a chilling aura of lethality. Weapon: handcrafted anti-material sniper rifle. Caliber: 12.7 millimeters. Effective range: 1850 meters. Ammunition: 12.7 by 99 millimeters tungsten core armor-piercing rounds. A stream of data lights up in my mind. The weapon handling skill kicks in immediately, flooding my brain with every detail. How to use it, calibrate it, maintain it. Even ballistic adjustments for wind and distance all seem like second nature, as if I've practiced thousands of times. I don't even need to test fire it. Shouldering the rifle, I gaze through the sight and aim at a tree in the distance. With a simple twist of the adjustment dial, the scope is perfectly zeroed in. The stream bubbles on, wind whistles lightly, but the place behind me is frozen in complete silence. Everyone stares blankly, their jaws practically unhinged enough to fit an egg. That's a rifle. The kind of heavy sniper rifle that only exists in movies or video games. The kind that smells like sheer death. What's worse, they just witnessed me forge this weapon, not from some pre-made parts, but from scrap and sheer determination, as though I had conjured it into existence with magic. Is that a sniper rifle? Oh my god, Fei Bao. Su Fei, are we dreaming? Someone pinch me. Su Fei? Fei Bao. None of them can form a complete sentence. What this? I casually shoulder the sniper rifle and start strolling forward as if I'm out for a walk. For a moment, they're stunned into silence, but the very next second, sharp, excited screams erupt like wildfire. Fei Bao, you built a freaking sniper rifle. How is this not a big deal? Qin Jia practically jumps as she catches up to me, shaking with excitement, her eyes locked on the rifle like it's the Holy Grail. In her mind, this isn't just some hunk of tools or a fishing rod. This is a gun, a weapon that puts you at the top of the food chain. And somehow, I had the audacity to just make one. Sheer insanity. Feels like something out of a fantasy. I glanced back casually. She glanced at me briefly and kept walking, unbothered. All right, I really can't keep up with you anymore, Su Ro replied from amidst the group. Someday, if you manage to build tanks, we'll just have to act like it's no big deal. Exactly. I'm numb at this point. From iron pots and seeds to rice, fishing rods, and now actual firearms. Our worldviews have been absolutely shattered by you. If you come up with anything else, we'd probably take it in stride too. The women all nodded in unison, looking at my back like I was some steady but terrifying enigma. Thanks. I laughed softly, my tone dripping with disdain. Ignoring their chatter, I focused solely on calculating the distance between myself and the dense wolf-populated forest ahead. Their voices gradually dwindled. They could feel it. I was getting serious. 500 meters. 1,000 meters. 1,500 meters. Song Yan stuck closely at my side, calling out numbers while helping to adjust for ballistics. The distance is good, she finally said. I stopped at a dirt ridge with an unobstructed view, smoothly dropped to the ground, and set up my rifle in one seamless motion. Wind speed, 3 meters per second. Eastward wind. Humidity at 75%. Distance, 1,521 meters. Adjust the reticle elevation by 1.5 mils and windage left by 0.3 mils, she instructed. Silent, I tuned the scope as per her data. The bipod dug firmly into the wet soil, and the rifle was as steady as if it had been bolted down. Pressing my shoulder against the stock and bringing my right eye to the sight, the world instantly zoomed into sharp clarity. The forest's edge was now right before me, the veins of the leaves nearly close enough to touch. A massive black wolf, noticeably larger than yesterday's, prowled near the edge. Its coat gleamed, muscles taut, and its eerie green eyes scanned the area with an intimidating vigilance, like it owned the place. Suddenly, it froze and lifted its nose to sniff. The next moment, its head snapped toward my direction, letting out a low, menacing growl that seemed to reach even across 1,500 meters. Now, Song Yan affirmed beside me the moment the opportunity presented itself. I pulled the trigger. Bang! The shot echoed like a thunderclap, and the distant wolf's head exploded into a cloud of red mist. Its body twitched twice before collapsing lifelessly onto the ground. For a moment, everything was silent. Then came the synchronized gasp from at least 10 women nearby. "Let's go check," I said, slinging my rifle back as I got up and headed down with them trailing behind. Surrounding the headless wolf corpse, the group was collectively dumbfounded. A single shot. And from that far. Is this even a gun? It's like a cannon. One of the more timid women covered her mouth, looking queasy, while the others grew increasingly loud with excitement. The way they stared at me shifted from reliance to something closer to outright reverence. Back at camp, the bonfire roared to life again. Pieces of processed wolf meat sizzled and dripped fat over the flames, filling the air with the delicious smell of roasting meat. I tore off a large chunk of wolf meat, chewing contently, when 2 lines of virtual text flashed before my eyes. Skill gained. Carbon manipulation. Anything alive, you can bend to your will. Talent gained. Oracle, detect threats ridiculously far away. I paused at the shock of the notifications, then continued munching away, almost indifferent. At this point, I was so numb to it all. But carbon manipulation? What did that even mean? It wasn't complicated when I thought about it. Carbon-based life forms plus cells, so in short, anything alive and moving could theoretically be manipulated by me. The sheer potential of the ability was terrifying. It could be applied in countless ways. As for Oracle, I was beyond satisfied with that one. That talent was unbelievably practical, second only to my earlier master craftsman skill. With Oracle, it was like carrying a worldwide danger radar in my back pocket. Very little could sneak up on me now. I was in a fantastic mood. After polishing off the wolf leg, I started butchering the rest of the carcass. Skinning, draining blood, removing organs, and dividing the meat. I worked with a speed and precision that belied inexperience. 17 women gathered around, watching curiously and occasionally letting out small gasps of surprise at my efficiency. While slicing meat and skewering it for roasting, I casually began instructing them in survival techniques. Lin Xinglan, staring at the bloody mess on the ground, voiced her concern. "Doesn't all this blood risk drawing other wild animals?" Without even looking up, I replied, "It will." She faltered, "Then why are you still?" Smiling up at her, I interrupted, "Because I want them to come." The group froze in collective shock. Qin Jiejia, baffled, asked, "Aren't we supposed to avoid danger?" Handing her a freshly grilled wolf heart, I said, "We avoid unknown dangers. But for known ones and those we can control," I gestured to the surroundings, "we eat them alive. Turn them into resources." Pointing to the dense forest, I continued, "This island is vast, and apart from the daily wolves, who knows what else lurks out there? Instead of waiting for them to ambush us at night, I'd rather draw them out now." Song Yan chimed in immediately. "You're using the scent of blood as bait?" I nodded. "Exactly. I need to figure out what, or who, sits at the top of this island's food chain." Taking a bite of the meat, I casually added, "If a pack of wolves or some harmless critters show up, great. But if something bigger and meaner comes..." I reached over to pat my ice-cold sniper rifle. "Even better. Dinner's on me tonight." At midnight, I stoked the dying fire and got it blazing again. The flames carved piercing holes through the surrounding darkness, illuminating the camp. So far, Oracle remained silent. Its description was clear. Within 10,000 miles, any threat capable of endangering me would trigger an advance warning. This island wasn't close to 10,000 miles across. That left only 2 possibilities. The blood hadn't lured anything, or something had been drawn in, but it was still far. "We can't lock them out," I muttered to myself. "On this island, there's a possibility. Maybe there aren't any other beasts after all, just that one unlucky wolf that keeps spawning." I lean more towards the first 2 hypotheses, though. I'd been waiting for 2 hours while the sea breeze weaved through the leaves, producing nothing but faint rustlings. Not a single other sound broke through the night. It seemed, at last, that tonight we might get by in peace. I let out a long breath of relief as I prepared to wind down. Days of intense work had left me drained, and my exhaustion was catching up. Setting my heavy sniper rifle against the wooden wall of the small cabin, I carefully positioned it within easy reach. Just in case, I was about to lie down when the stillness of the camp was abruptly disturbed. By the campfire, someone who was supposed to be sound asleep sat up, moving softly but deliberately. It was Chinjejia. A bit thrown, I stood up and walked over. The firelight stretched our shadows out long and thin across the ground. As I neared, I finally saw her clearly. She was hugging her knees tightly, burying her face into the crook of her arms. Her shoulders trembled. She was crying. The moment she heard footsteps approaching, her head snapped up. When she realized it was me, she quickly swiped at her tears with the back of her hand, trying to pull herself together. Through the heavy weight of her sniffles, she forced out a weak, shaky smile. I just feel like, for this moment, I'm not so alone. Her voice barely rose above the crackling flames. Alone? I instinctively glanced back at the small cabin, where 16 of my female co-workers were fast asleep. Around the camp, the only other sounds were the wind brushing through the trees and the occasional pop from the fire. Everyone was accounted for, and yet, at the same time, they weren't. I got it. This kind of loneliness wasn't about whether other people happened to be nearby. I didn't press her for answers. Instead, I lowered myself to sit beside her. I left just enough space for a fist to fit between us. Raising my hand slightly, I hesitated before gently patting her trembling back. I let out a low sigh because, honestly, what could I even say to provide comfort? 1 second, we were still on the plane, enthusiastically chatting about team building, where to eat, what games to play. The next second, the familiar world we knew vanished entirely, leaving only this strange and perilous island. She missed home, her family, friends who were always one call or message away. She missed the life she used to know, air-conditioned rooms, bubble tea, movie nights, scrolling endlessly through social media. And I did too. Worst of all, the vast, icy heavens above us had already declared their verdict. This, like it or not, was a survival game, one we were all forcibly thrown into. And that meant our lives, our fates, now rested in the hands of invisible rules we didn't understand and couldn't change. No one could escape it. That overwhelming feeling of helplessness, trapped between yearning for the past and fearing what tomorrow might bring, was enough to break any adult, let alone a young woman like her. Time had melted away without us noticing. Almost a month had passed since we first landed here. In that month, I'd seen countless co-workers crying in secret at night, as well as others breaking down in tears outright in broad daylight. It's just human instinct, really. No one should judge them for it. So we sat there in silence, both of us lost in our own thoughts. The fire crackled on, as if it were trying to ignite the uncomfortable quiet hanging between us. Eventually, Chinjejia's soft sob subsided. My presence seemed to have steadied her a little. She sniffled, tilting her head to glance at me with her damp, puffy eyes. "Thank you," she murmured. "There's nothing to thank me for," I replied, shaking my head. An awkward quiet settled in again, but it lacked the heavy tension from earlier. Instead, it carried a hint of self-consciousness, like neither of us knew what to do next. If this silence dragged on any longer, I felt like I'd suffocate from it. I considered cracking a joke, but thought better of it. It didn't seem right. In the end, I opted to break the mood the only way I knew how, with some goofy antics. Raising 2 fingers to my temple, I pretended to aim and made a sudden, dramatic thrust forward. "Biu," I declared loudly. Chinjejia froze, staring at me. Honestly, it felt cringy as hell, but I stubbornly kept at it, doubling down on the ridiculousness. Waving my hand by my face as if performing a magic trick, I hid my fingers behind my back and deadpanned. "Look, I just snatched all your worries away." She blinked at me, utterly bewildered by my serious expression. Then, out of nowhere, she let out a giggle, a real one. Tears still clung to the corners of her eyes, but her lips curved upwards. In that moment, her entire face seemed to light up. Seeing her laugh made me feel relieved. "I was in my university's drama club, you know," I remarked casually, grasping at anything to keep the conversation going. "Once played a tree in a stage production." "A tree?" Her curiosity piqued. She leaned in slightly. "Yep, one of those scenery props, stood there the whole time without a single line of dialogue." I chuckled, a bit self-deprecating. But the director told me I played it with so much depth, resilient at times, melancholic at others. That made her laugh even harder, her shoulders shaking as her chest rose and fell. "So, what role are you playing now?" she teased, her tone lighter than it had been all night. "Now." I paused, stroking my chin thoughtfully, as if pondering some great philosophical truth. Right now, I'm playing the philosopher by the campfire, delving into the origins of the universe and the meaning of life itself. At that, I grabbed a nearby stick and began doodling random shapes into the sand. "And what have you uncovered in your research, O wise philosopher?" she prodded, clearly humoring me as her body unconsciously leaned closer. "I've discovered something groundbreaking," I said, stretching out my words for dramatic effect. Then, I leaned toward her and lowered my voice. "Add more firewood at night. It'll get cold if the fire dies out." The warmth of my breath brushed against her ear, making her shoulder twitch upward in both surprise and slight embarrassment. Her face flushed bright red as she shrank away, swatting at me in mock annoyance. "Ugh, you're unbearable," she sputtered, even as a shy smile replaced her pout. But she didn't scoot far. If anything, she shifted a bit closer. The campfire burned steadily between us, and the wind carried a soft warmth with it as it passed. Little by little, the lingering fear and loneliness in her heart began to fade away, replaced by a fragile but growing sense of comfort. It felt like someone hit the mute button. I caught a faint scent on her, a mix of soft perfume and the salty tang of sea breeze. I watched as her eyelashes quivered and her lip was slightly bitten. My mind urged me to stay in check, but my body leaned forward, bit by bit, centimeter after centimeter. She didn't move away, just closed her eyes. The next moment, my lips pressed against hers, featherlight, like testing uncharted waters. Soft beyond reason, carrying a hint of saltiness and sweetness. There was no entanglement, no pull, yet it was intoxicating in a way that defied sense. As we parted, Chin Jejia opened her eyes suddenly, her cheeks glowing red, so flushed that she couldn't even look at me. Then, in the blink of an eye, she jumped up and darted toward the small hut. I'm tired. Good night." She tossed out her words mid-sprint, her retreat like that of someone fleeing a crime scene. I stayed seated, lifting a hand to wipe my lips. The sensation lingered, absurdly soft, with that faint sweetness still present. The night passed on. When I reopened my eyes, sunlight was already filtering through the gaps in the leaves. I sat up and flipped to my feet, realizing the girls had all risen even earlier. The camp was unusually quiet, only faint bird calls echoing in the distance. They had divided the work nicely, some gathering twigs, others sorting supplies. Not one of them came to disturb me. It was unsettling how obedient they were. I began by chambering and then ejecting a round from the sniper rifle, checking to make sure it was in perfect shape. Beside me, someone had left a bowl of steaming white rice, topped with a few pieces of caramelized potatoes. I wolfed down a couple of bites before wiping my face and getting to my feet, giving a casual wave to the busy girls. At the well, I splashed icy water on my face, waking up properly. I snapped off a fresh twig to use as a makeshift toothbrush, the bitterness shocking my tongue awake. With my mind clear, it was time to get down to real work. I went to the clay stove and lit a fire. The dry branches crackled, sending flames licking upward. Tossing the steel ingot in to preheat, I brought out a spare length of barrel and measured it against the saw for cutting. The screech of metal against metal was grating, and just a few minutes in, my arms were starting to ache. The blade kept snagging, making every stroke an effort. I was grumbling about the unfair labor of it all when I felt a sudden shift. The physical rhythm of it changed in my hands. Thanks to my skill proficiency, the saw suddenly felt like an extension of me, synced in angle, force, and pace. Before long, the barrel was neatly cut, so precise it was practically burr-free. Pressing forward, I noticed I was missing a file. Straightening up, I made a quick trip back to the supply pile to fetch it. As soon as I reached it, I saw Chin Jejia squatting down, organizing dried grass. She must have heard my footsteps because she looked up and caught my gaze. Her face flushed bright red again, and in a fluster, she began shifting the grass away, clearly avoiding me. I paused, exhaling a quiet laugh under my breath. That kiss from last night, on a deserted island, moments like that were bound to stir awkward tension. Forcing a conversation now would only make it worse. If she needed distance, I'd give her space. Holding the file, I turned back to the stove and resumed crafting the firearm. As the sun climbed higher, my skill took over like some hyper-precise machine. The more I worked, the clearer my mental framework became. If a concept popped into my head, bam, a complete, detailed blueprint would unfold on its own. Each step, even the craftsmanship, was displayed for me like clockwork. This talent wasn't just useful, it adapted to the environment, auto-upgrading as needed. For example, if you wanted the perfect weapon for the island's conditions, the system automatically provided the most optimal specs. By midday, the fruits of my labor sat gleaming on a stone slab, 3 sleek pieces of obsidian black metal. I whistled low at my handiwork. 3 Beretta 92FS, also known as the M9. Their glossy, streamlined frame exuded danger, all sharp lines and deadly precision. The kind of gear made for harsh environments like this. Accurate, low maintenance, and, most importantly, durable. Rain, sand, mud, you could dunk it in anything, and it would still fire reliably. The perfect no-nonsense survival tool. I grabbed one in each hand, striking a dramatic dual-wielding pose straight out of an action movie. Bet you know bullets in your gun. The iconic one-liner from films flashed in my mind. If I said that out loud, it'd probably be cringeworthy as hell. But who cares? I was having fun. As I moved, gun stats lit up like a display in my mind. Beretta 92F. Caliber, 9mm. Overall length, 217mm. Barrel length, 125mm. Empty weight, 0.96 kilograms. Magazine, 15 round capacity. Effective range, 50 meters. Muzzle velocity, 333.7 meters per second. Sniper rifles, though powerful, were almost a burden in jungle or island terrain. Clunky, hard to maneuver. In close encounters, a blade or a reliable handgun trumps all. A good pistol is your last line of defense when things get really close. Lowering the M9S, I pulled over the prepared wolf hide. Using the contour of the M9 as the guide, I cut and fashioned a wide tactical belt. Quick-draw holsters were bolted to either side, tailored to a snug, secure fit, not too tight or loose. Once the belt was strapped across my hips, I practiced drawing and reholstering the guns, smooth as butter, like an RPG character fresh off a skill upgrade. Grabbing handfuls of 9mm rounds, I loaded the magazines, tucking spares into separate ammo pouches. As the weight settled into my waistband, a deep sense of preparedness followed. With the handgun sorted, I moved to the sniper rifle, fitting it with a strap for easy back carry. Adjusting the length, I slung it diagonally across my back like some post-apocalyptic soldier. Glancing at the rippling reflection in the water, I suddenly had an idea. If I tied a red bandana around my forehead, I'd look just like Rambo. The snicker escaped before I could stop it. Grabbing a nearby hatchet, I clipped it to my belt for good measure. There was still a stretch of uncharted island to explore today. Once everything was set, I headed back toward the camp. Su-Ro and Meow Meow were huddled together, sharing whispers. When they spotted me in full gear, their eyes widened in awe. "Whoa, Fabout!" Meow Meow jumped up, circling me like a hyped-up squirrel. "Are you off to shoot an action movie?" "Whoa, that's so cool." Su-Ro couldn't keep up her cold demeanor anymore. Her cheeks flushed as she mumbled, "You look really handsome today." The compliment made my head swell a little. I struck a pose. When do I not look handsome? I glanced over at the campfire. Chin Jieja was crouching to add more firewood. Hearing the commotion, her back stiffened. She didn't turn around, just traced circles in the dirt with a stick, her ears bright red. I walked over and cleared my throat. "Jieja." She jumped slightly, almost throwing her stick into the flames, then tried to play it cool as she stared at the fire. "Ah, you're leaving now." Her tone was overly casual, way too forced, and she didn't even dare look up. I understood. She was still shaken from last night. I didn't call her out. Instead, I unbuckled the new M9 pistol I had crafted along with 2 full magazines, placing them on the rock next to her. "Keep this for self-defense." I cast a serious look at them and lowered my voice. Low recoil, easy to use. There are also steel spears, short axes, and machetes back in the camp. If you run into wild animals, you can at least hold them off. Stay put, stay alive. Su-Ro and Meow Meow nodded in quiet agreement. Chin Jieja ducked her head low and whispered in "okay," fingers clutching at the hem of her shirt. I turned to leave. "I'm going. Wait for me to come back." With a sniper rifle on my back, a handgun and short axe at my waist, I headed into the depths of the jungle. Once my silhouette disappeared into the thick underbrush, Jieja seemed to deflate, slowly turning her gaze in the direction I'd gone. Her eyes shimmered with suppressed frustration. She picked up the pistol, her fingers brushing over the cold metal surface as she muttered under her breath, "Stupid Su-Fei." Her eyes rimmed red, but they never left that path. You kissed me first last night, and today you act like nothing happened. Big jerk. I decided to start scouting along the coastline. The logic was simple. I was looking for a fresh water source, tracks of something or someone coming ashore, and a safe route. Plus, avoiding the jungle's unknown perils for now was just common sense. It's like checking out the layout of an apartment before deciding whether to buy it. If you don't understand the edge of this cage, how can you know where the exits are, or if there even are any? Information is survival. Without a clear understanding of the terrain, you can't divvy up resources or prepare for whatever might be lurking here. At some point, I hit a dead end. A sheer cliff of black, jagged rocks loomed ahead, cutting off my view as if someone had slashed the land in two. I frowned, tightened the strap on the sniper rifle slung over my back, and started climbing cautiously, the slick rock face damp beneath my hands. When I poked my head around the top, all I got was a wave of salt water splashing me square in the face. It tasted bitter as hell. The other side was sandy again, blindingly white under the sun, but the shoreline curved inward, forming an arch. I wasn't about to fight with this cliffside. Instead, I backtracked and scouted the opposite direction. It was the same story there, less intimidating obstacles, but still curving inward. The conclusion was clear. This island was roughly an irregular oval shape. I plopped down on a dry rock and took a swig from my wolf-hide water pouch, then rummaged through my cloth bag for a roasted potato. Durable, filling, they were basically gold at this point. While peeling it, I stared at the vivid, unreal blue of the ocean, my mind racing with calculations. I had started scouting around 10 in the morning. Now, judging by the sun, it was closing in on 4 or 5 in the afternoon. That's 6 to 7 hours out here. Subtracting brief rests and a few detours, I had been actively walking for 4 hours. At my pace, 3 to 4 kilometers an hour, I'd easily covered over 10 kilometers. Given that both ends of the coastline seemed to curve the same way, I guessed I had covered roughly half the island's perimeter. That put its total circumference at around 30 kilometers. I bit into the potato, chewing while I kept working on the math. If the circumference is about 30 kilometers, that makes the radius less than 5 kilometers. The island's area would be somewhere between 8 to 10 square kilometers, roughly the size of 1,000 football fields. Not massive, but far from small either. Plenty of room to hide hundreds of people, or something else entirely. I finished the last bite of potato, brushed off the crumbs, and got up. I'd rested enough. Time to head inland. Circling the beach is reconnaissance, but plunging into the forest, that's exploration. I turned my back to the sea, staring into the dense woods. The beach, for all its emptiness, at least offered an open view and breathing room. But the moment you step into that forest, leaving behind the camp and the faint traces of humanity, the weight of the unknown descends on you like a predator waiting to pounce. It's the same oppressive feeling as walking through a dark alley at night, that gut-wrenching sense that someone, or something, is watching you. I took a deep breath, forcing my lungs to steady, and forged ahead. The forest was unnervingly quiet. The deeper I went, the heavier the atmosphere became, as if no one had ever dared enter before me. The trees were peculiar, with ashen-gray bark and twisted branches clawing at the sky like skeletal hands. The underbrush was dense and intimidating. Thorny vines sprawled across the ground, ready to snag your legs the moment you let your guard down. My hands instinctively reached for my weapons, short axe in the left, pistol in the right. With both in my grip, my pounding heart calmed just a bit. I crouched low and made my way forward, careful to avoid snapping any twigs underfoot. Suddenly, I froze. The muddy ground ahead was riddled with tracks. I knelt down to examine them, and the longer I stared, the more uneasy I became. These weren't regular animal prints. They looked like hooves, but with webbing, like a duck's. Some were crescent-shaped, like a cow's. The most unsettling ones were large, circular indentations. Deep, like a massive pig. My throat tightened, and my hand around the pistol became slick with sweat. There's a wild boar nearby, or something even worse. That Shinjeja was the one calling the shots. Her fierce and unyielding nature made her a natural leader, someone the others instinctively looked to for direction. And frankly, she was doing a pretty solid job maintaining order. Quietly, I admired her for it, though I'd never say that out loud. But tonight was going to break their routine wide open. As I approached the camp, the sound of hooves, webbed feet, and cloven hooves crunching through underbrush made my entourage quite hard to miss. The excited honks of ducks and the occasional moo from the cattle echoed through the dim forest, the rhythmic clatter a chorus that announced, "We've got company." I yelled ahead, "Heads up, folks. I brought home dinner for a week." Suddenly, the firelight illuminated me, and not just me, but the unconventional caravan trailing behind. The women looked up collectively, and for a split second, there was pure silence. Their shadows froze. One girl even stopped mid-chew on a piece of dried fish. And then, predictable chaos. "What are those livestock? Holy crap, David, where did you find them? Is that a cow?" Careful not to lose my composure or my grip on the control skill, I replied casually, "Just a little stroll in the woods and a whole lot of charm." I turned back to my obedient farm friends with all the authoritative confidence of a drill sergeant hosting a parade for barnyard animals. "All right, team, huddle up by the fire. No stragglers." The big hog snorted. The ducks flapped and waddled. The chickens clucked as they scrutinized every corner of their new environment. Even the cows moved as though reluctantly conceding that this would do for now. Meat, eggs, milk. Guess who just added protein to our survival menu? I announced, grinning like I just conquered Rome. "Ladies, we eat like kings starting tomorrow. Let's all thank Farmer David." Sheen Jejia stepped forward, trying to hide her surprise with a skeptical raised brow. "Nice haul, farmer," she said dryly, but her tone betrayed her approval. "So, what's the plan? You build a barn next? Or do we roast one tonight?" The big white pig at the front let out a nervous grunt, almost as if it understood her and suddenly feared becoming tonight's campfire special. I crossed my arms in exaggerated piety. "No way. These fellas are sticking around for now. They've got more value alive than dead." My eyes zeroed in on the pig's thick, meaty legs again, a fleeting internal struggle between reason and hunger stirring in my head. "But don't you worry, when the time comes, pork chops and bacon are on the menu." Sheen smirked, clearly unimpressed by my attempt at magnanimity. "Yeah, good luck keeping them alive long enough. Do you even know how to take care of livestock?" I tapped the side of my head, winking. "Turns out, I've got hidden talents. Just trust me on this one." It was only then that I fully realized how much this moment mattered. On an island riddled with uncertainty, where fish and coconuts were almost too plentiful but always the same, this squad of domesticated animals symbolized possibility, variety, and for the first time since the shipwreck, a real sense of normalcy. Sure, this was survival of the fittest. But now, with our new little farm in tow, it looked like we might just be fit enough to actually thrive. I'll admit, though, I'm still thinking about roasting those pigs' feet. Listen to Chinjejia. She used to be the CEO of a publicly listed company. She's accustomed to taking charge, and others are used to following her orders. The group huddled around the campfire, engaging in scattered conversation, but it was clear their attention was elsewhere. Their eyes kept darting toward the darkness beyond the campsite, as though they were waiting for someone to return. I had been out exploring the island for a full day, though I mentioned before leaving that the distance was far and I might not make it back tonight. It was impossible for anyone to feel at ease. Sure, they understood logically, but no amount of reasoning could quell the unease in their hearts. Without me, the camp felt like a snail without its shell, so fragile it made everyone anxious. For Chinjejia, Su Ro, and Meow Meow, this feeling was especially intense. "I should have gone with him," Su Ro murmured into her knees, her voice muffled. "What if something happens to Fei Bao out there?" Meow Meow bit her lip, her face clouded with worry. Chinjejia straightened her back, putting on a strong front. "What would you even do if you had? If something really happened, all you do is drag him down." Trying to suppress her own emotions, she reprimanded them. "Everyone stay put. He said he might not be back tonight. He has a gun. What could possibly happen?" Though her words sounded confident, inside, Chinjejia was just as unsettled. But she couldn't let it show. If she faltered, the rest of the group would unravel. The sea breeze whipped the flames of the campfire sideways. A few women were nodding off in exhaustion, but no one dared lie down to sleep. They were all waiting for me. The night grew even darker. Suddenly, a piercing scream tore through the silence. "T there, what is that?" Song Yan stood trembling, unable to keep her balance as she pointed a shaking finger toward the pitch-black beach. Chinjejia shot to her feet and stared intently in the same direction. But all she could see was darkness. "I don't see anything. Yan, what's wrong?" Tears welled up in Song Yan's eyes as she stammered. I saw a lot of eyes. Green ones, red ones, so many of them. Panic erupted through the camp like wildfire. Eyes. Where? The fear spread rapidly, fueled by the unknown. Qin Jiajia's scalp prickled, but she grabbed the gun I left behind. The cold metal in her hand steadied her, even if only slightly. Do not panic, she shouted, her voice strong and commanding. Everyone arm yourselves. Bows, spears, hatchets, grab anything you can. And gather here. Patrols, get back to the fire immediately. The women stationed further out stumbled and scrambled their way back to the campfire, their faces pale as sheets. Before long, all 17 women had formed a tight circle around the fire. Arrows pointed inward, spears and axes outward, all aimed in the direction Song Yan had indicated. Despite their efforts, their hands were shaking uncontrollably. The atmosphere froze. Only their breaths and pounding heartbeats filled the void. Their G getting closer. Song Yan's voice cracked, every halting word igniting the growing dread. At the edge of the darkness, where the beach met the jungle, a cluster of strange lights appeared. Green and red, flickering and shifting in dense clusters, all moving toward the campsite. The fear was suffocating. Faces went pale, backs broke into a cold sweat, and even the bravest couldn't stop their limbs from trembling. It didn't look like a few wild animals. It looked like a monstrous wave, made up entirely of glowing eyes. From 1,000 meters away, their chaotic footsteps reached on the sea breeze. At 800 meters, the lights became clearer, their movements eerie and unnatural. Qin Jejia gripped the pistol tighter. Sweat slicked her palms, making the gun feel slippery and cold. Her mind raced. Shoot? Don't shoot? Would shooting even matter, or would it just seal their fate? She was trembling, but she forced herself to stay at the front of the group regardless. At 500 meters, their silhouettes finally emerged from the shadows. They were uneven in height, some as tall as a person, others only reaching knee level. The noises they made weren't the roars or growls of predators. Instead, they sounded like a mishmash of animal calls. Qin Jejia froze. Wait, was that familiar? Are those pig noises? Meow Meow sniffled, her face streaked with tears. Sounds like chickens clucking too. And was that a cow? Under the glow of the campfire, the truth came crashing down. There were no claws or fangs. No monsters. Just the squealing of pigs, the quacking of ducks, the clucking of chickens, and the slow, deliberate steps of cows and sheep, all crammed together, shuffling toward the camp in a chaotic herd. At the front of this army was a disheveled figure wielding a long tree branch, doing his best to herd the animals. It was me. For 3 full seconds, the camp fell into stunned silence. And then, asterisk clang. Asterisk a spear slipped out of someone's hand and hit the ground. One by one, weapons clattered to the earth in a cacophony. The tension, which had been wound tighter than a bowstring, snapped all at once. After the sheer contrast between their expectations and reality, everyone looked utterly dazed. Seconds ago, they had braced for a horde of terrifying creatures. Now, in front of them was a very chaotic, very noisy parade of livestock shuffling into camp. A few of the women who'd been crying just moments earlier were still sniffling out of pure shock, staring blankly at the animals. It wasn't until I walked up to Qin Jejia that she finally seemed to register what was happening. Her knees almost buckled as the tension drained from her body. If I hadn't steadied her, she might have collapsed entirely. The pistol she had been gripping so tightly fell limply to her side, and all the color had drained from her face. She had been terrified, more than anyone else. What's with the grand welcome ceremony? I quipped, glancing at the women armed with weapons and tear-streaked faces. I couldn't help but laugh. I quickly explained how things had unfolded. While exploring the island, I discovered it was much larger than expected, at least 8 to 10 square kilometers. By sheer luck, I stumbled upon a valley filled with domesticated livestock, clearly once cared for by people. Get all that meat back to the camp immediately, I decided without hesitation. This island is likely not a natural one. I stared at everyone, speaking seriously. It seems more like a simulation created by some sort of system. So unusual things happening here are perfectly normal. No matter how bizarre things get in the future, don't act so shocked. As I spoke, I patted Qin Jejia on the shoulder, trying to calm her anxiety. You've worked hard. Just that one sentence, and Qin Jiejia's eyes turned red, though she quickly turned her head to hide her tears. Fei Bao. Meow Meow couldn't hold back any longer. She dashed over, hugging me tightly with all her might. Sob, sob. You scared me to death. I thought some wild animal had eaten you. Nobody thought much of it. Meow Meow had always been like a little sister who needed looking after. I ruffled her hair and then turned to wave at everyone else. All right, enough with the tears. Starting tomorrow, we're adding to the menu. Braised pork belly, beef stew with potatoes, eat as much as you want. The camp froze for 2 seconds, then erupted in cheers that seemed to chase away the cold and darkness of the night. At dawn, I was woken up by a system notification sound. Feeding talent activated, get up and check it out. I shot upright, rubbing my eyes as I stumbled out of my little brick room. The moment I stepped outside, I was wide awake. Right there in the open space outside the camp was a pile of new supplies, bags neatly stacked on top of one another. It was all animal feed, chicken feed, pig feed, even forage blocks for cows and sheep. Beside it was another pile of small sealed packets. I ripped one open, and a strong aroma immediately hit me. It was packed full of spices, chili powder, cinnamon sticks, bay leaves, star anise, cumin. The sheer variety was overwhelming. Shufei, look. Fei Bao, how did all this stuff just show up out of nowhere? Several early risers ran over holding packets of spices, looking at me in shock. I kept a neutral expression. I'd seen this happen too many times before. Obviously, I couldn't admit I was the one behind it all, so I passed the blame elsewhere. Must have been from the system, I said, shrugging casually. Probably figured we'd need this stuff now that we're raising livestock. They bought it, getting more and more excited as they speculated. I didn't feel like joining their conversation and went to wash up instead. Afterward, I inspected the reinforced fencing I'd worked on last night. The wooden stakes were driven deep, the vines were tightly wrapped, and all the chickens, ducks, cows, sheep, and pigs were accounted for, happily munching on the new feed. By noon, the smell of cooking meat wafted through the camp. I gripped a boning knife, skillfully breaking down the goat we had just slaughtered. Meat chunks fell neatly onto clean banana leaves. But an issue quickly arose. We only had 2 large iron pots in the camp. To cook enough beef and mutton for everyone to eat, we'd have to rotate the pots for 5 or 6 hours. The last batch wouldn't be done until nightfall. I handed the meat over to Qin Jiejia and Su Ro. Start boiling water in the pots. Blanch the meat first to get rid of the blood and any gamey smells. Got it. The women got to it immediately, lighting fires and busying around the pots. I turned and wandered over to 3 unassuming earthen furnaces. Over an hour later, the meat was all blanched and set aside. I returned to the camp, drawing everyone's eyes the moment I appeared. I was holding 2 shiny new contraptions in one hand and had 3 more tied with vines slung over my shoulder. A cylindrical body, tightly sealed lids, with a vent on top for steam to escape. No way. Fei Bao, you're amazing. Shufei, this is insane. Are those pressure cookers? Meow Meow broke into an excited little song, making everyone laugh. I stayed calm, setting the 5 brand new, still warm pressure cookers on the ground. Lid locks, steam vents, weights, all the components were intact. I'd already figured out the mechanics of these things ages ago. With my current crude craftsmanship and the heat and pressure from the earthen furnaces, making a few basic pressure cookers was a piece of cake. I grabbed a few long, strong tendons from the leftover goat and cow offal and washed them thoroughly by the seaside. Skillfully, I fitted them into the grooves of the lids. There, natural sealing rings, all set. Refill the pots, get the fires going. As soon as I spoke, the women quickly placed the 5 cookers over the flames and started adding water. The blanched beef and mutton pieces were packed inside until the pots were nearly full. Potato chunks were tossed in, and then all the new spices went in too. Cinnamon sticks, bay leaves, star anise, chili powder. I grabbed handfuls and threw them in liberally. The aroma instantly became impossible to ignore. I secured the lids, tightened the locks, and adjusted the weights over the vents. Before long, steam started hissing from all 5 cookers, white clouds billowing out from beneath the weights. The mouth-watering scent of cooked meat filled the entire camp. Everyone gathered around the fires, sniffing madly, their eyes practically glazed over. Drooling was inevitable at this point. Time to eat, I announced after another half hour, estimating that the food was ready. There was no need to tell them twice. Several of the women grabbed water jugs and began pouring cold water over the red-hot lids. PSSSSHHHHH. Steam hissed as the pressure rapidly dropped. The moment the first lid was lifted, Meow Meow was already front and center, grabbing a big chunk of tender beef with her chopsticks. She didn't even wait for it to cool before shoving it into her mouth. The piece was too large. Her cheeks suddenly puffed up, and with a muffled voice, she said, So good." Everyone burst into laughter right on the spot. I couldn't help but laugh too, and casually picked out a few more pieces for her bowl. "Take your time. There's plenty. Eat to your heart's content tonight." That one bite seemed to ignite something in Meow Meow Meow. The others couldn't hold back anymore either, rushing forward with their bowls and chopsticks in hand. Chin Jia was the boldest. She reached straight into the pot, tearing out a rib with meat hanging off of it, and took a hearty bite. The meat was so tender it practically melted in her mouth. The rich broth burst with flavor as it hit her taste buds. She couldn't hold back and exclaimed on the spot, "This is incredible. So juicy. So tender. This is my kind of flavor." Even Su Ro, who always tried to keep it cool, couldn't care less about appearances now. She buried herself into bowl after bowl, unable to stop. Some of the women, while eating, began tearing up. Tears dropped into their bowls as they softly murmured, "This tastes just like Mom's cooking. Yeah, it's been so long since I've tasted something like this." The camp was filled with the sounds of chewing mixed with quiet sobbing. I cleared my throat, frowning as I glanced at them. "Mom's cooking? What are you all talking about? This is clearly Dad's flavor." Everyone froze for just a moment, then erupted into laughter. Right. Totally Dad's flavor. Yeah, Su Fei Dad's signature taste. They egged each other on, making the camp livelier than it had been in days. This was the fullest and most satisfying meal they'd had in the 30 days since arriving on the island. Afterward, everyone slumped onto the grass, their bellies as round as drums, their faces glowing with rare satisfaction. The lamb and beef we ate seemed to replenish their longing for the comforts of the civilized world, bite by bite. Even I was so full I could barely move. Leaning against a tree, I let out a sigh of relief. Without cheats or golden fingers, I'd probably still be out here wearing leaves and starving if it weren't for sheer luck. Just as we were soaking in the aftermath of the feast, the skies suddenly turned dark. Thick black clouds rolled in, followed by raindrops the size of beans that pelted down with a furious rhythm. "It's raining. Quick, let's get inside." Everyone shouted and laughed as they bolted towards the small brick houses, disappearing under cover in no time. I stayed seated outside my door, watching the rain blur the lines between the sea and sky. At some point, Meow 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 shuffled over, beaming dumbly at me. "Fei Bao, it's raining." "Yeah, it's raining." She stretched out her hand to catch the rain and licked a drop, only to spit it out with a bleg. It tasted salty, muddy, and metallic, like rust, gross enough that her face scrunched up into a ball. I reached out and ruffled her hair. The rain got heavier, carving little streams into the wet ground. A few gutsy women dashed out, laughing and throwing their arms wide as they tilted their heads back to shout into the rain. "This feels amazing." It was the first rain in 30 days, a brief relief from the oppressive heat of the tropical island. Meow Meow's eyes sparkled, and she screamed as she darted out into the downpour, jumping and splashing around. I didn't move. I just stared at the sea, the horizon swallowed by sheets of rain. The sound of the rain was like white noise, but in my head, something clicked. Suddenly, a complex mechanical diagram came together in my mind's eye. The parts, the structure, it was all so clear. I muttered to myself, someone could build it with nothing. With my skills, I can do it too. Building a submarine wasn't complicated in theory. Flood tanks to sink, pump the water out to float. The real challenge would be the power source and oxygen supply. A steam engine might work, but the fuel requirements would make it impractical. Electricity was more likely. A hand-crank generator could produce power, and electrolysis could create oxygen. With the right know-how, I could even produce sulfuric acid and batteries to store the charge. I was going to build a submarine. I've always prepared for the worst. The survival scenarios from the Heaven's Vault game were never going to be smooth sailing. Now that Song Yan had awakened her abilities, I had a gut feeling something big was coming. What if someone intruded on the island? What if they were stronger than us? This wasn't the kind of situation where you could rely on luck. No matter what, we needed a way out. The submarine would be our insurance. The rhythm of the rain mirrored my train of thought, and before I knew it, I was nodding off. I don't know how much time passed, but when I woke, I felt dizzy and disoriented. The moment my head spun, an icy warning shot through me. Something was wrong. Had I gotten sick? Getting sick out here in the wilderness could be fatal. Damn it! I cursed under my breath, trying to steady myself as I leaned on the wall to stand. My limbs felt weak. The sun glaring down left me staggering. This wasn't a regular cold. Something else was going on. Even with all the confidence in the world, a pit of anxiety grew in my chest. I wasn't just responsible for myself. There were 17 others to protect, and this island was rife with dangers we couldn't yet comprehend. I tried to head back inside to lay down, but just a few steps in, my vision went completely black. The last thing I remember was falling forward, my body crashing into the muddy ground with a thud. Mud splashed, and then voices. Shouting. Faye. Faye Bao. The first to notice was one of the sharper-eyed women. What's going on over there? Everyone turned toward where I'd collapsed, their hearts sinking in unison. Oh my God. Su Fei. Su Ro screamed, bolting toward me. Quick, get over here. Chaos erupted across the camp. All 17 women scrambled toward me desperately. The rain had made the ground slick. Some fell into the mud only to get back up and keep running. On their faces, you couldn't tell whether it was rain or mud dripping down anymore. Only one thought remained. Get to me. When they surrounded me, the sight before my eyes was suffocating. I laid motionless in the mud, half of my face buried in the dirt. Su Fei. Su Fei, wake up. Su Ro knelt down, her trembling hands trying to turn me over, but too afraid to use force. Don't move him. Qin Jiejia rushed over, her voice cracked from shouting. Check if he's still breathing first. Song Yan fought to stay calm, squatting down and placing her fingers under my nose. No one dared to breathe, their eyes glued to Song Yan's hand. She spoke with a trembling voice. He's still breathing. Quick, get him out of the mud. We can't leave him lying here. Qin Jiejia ordered, but even her voice quivered at the end. A few of them charged forward to lift me up, but they froze at the next moment. I was too heavy and the ground too slippery. 7 or 8 women together could barely lift me a bit. 1, 2, 3. We can't lift him. Support his head. Cries and screams blended into chaos. The more frantic they got, the more hopeless it seemed. Their worst fear had come true. Their pillar of support had collapsed. With arms weak and sore from effort, it took 10+ women, dragging and pulling, to finally get me onto the brick bed inside the small shelter. The group huddled around, their faces pale as if they'd seen a ghost. What's wrong with him? Fei Bao, wake up. Qin Jiejia clenched her teeth, forcing everyone to focus. Quiet. Su Ro, check his forehead. Su Ro placed her hand on my forehead, only to yank it back immediately. He's burning up. Burning so badly. It doesn't feel like a normal fever. Meow Meow pressed her ear to my chest, tears streaming uncontrollably. His heartbeat. It's so faint, like it could stop any moment. Jiang Mina was pacing back and forth in a panic. What about his breathing? Is he still breathing? Song Yan checked again, her voice even lower now. Still breathing, but also very weak. The room fell into an eerie silence, broken only by suppressed sobbing. Qin Jiejia's mind raced as she considered the worst-case scenario. Could it be a bite? A venomous snake? Or some insect we've never seen? The mere suggestion froze everyone in place. Do we need to check? How? Shen Inua's question directed everyone's gaze to my mud-covered clothing. The tension snapped after a brief pause. Take off his clothes. Jiang Mina yelled through gritted teeth. All of them. Check every inch. Look for bites or wounds. Forget about modesty right now. Her words jolted everyone back to their senses. With my life hanging by a thread, shame and awkwardness meant nothing. The women surged forward, hands shaking as they hurriedly pulled at my clothes. The wet fabric clung to my skin, the mud adding to the nightmare. Every tug made it harder. Some worked on my upper body, others on my legs, pulling together. Soon enough, I was left stark naked, lying exposed on the straw bed. No one blushed. A dozen pairs of eyes swept over me like scalpels, inspecting me head to toe. From my neck to my chest, my arms to my back, down to my legs. No spot was ignored. Nothing. Nothing on his legs either. What about his back? Flip him over. A few of them teamed up to turn me. There were only a few shallow scratches on my back. Otherwise, nothing. There's nothing. Absolutely nothing. Su Ro broke down, collapsing to her knees as she sobbed into her hands. Not even a red. The discovery was a cold splash of water. No bite, no sting, no external injury. Then what on earth is wrong with Fei Bao? Meow Meow sobbed. Is he going to die? The word die hit the room like a chokehold. If I were gone, what would they do to survive? Several women crumbled then and there, their weeping echoing like a collapsing wall. They finally grasped it. The true apocalypse wasn't the disaster itself. It was their only source of support slipping away. Don't say that. Qin Jejia sprang to her feet, eyes red as she shouted. He's going to be fine. He has to be. She forced herself to stay composed, shooting out orders immediately. Grab a wet cloth. Cool him down. Hurry. Finally, they had a task, a direction. Stumbling and tripping, they fetched water and wrung out cloths. Qin Jejia pressed a cold, damp cloth against my overheated forehead. But the fever wouldn't budge, like it was beyond being suppressed. My chest rose and fell slower and slower, almost imperceptibly. My once steady heartbeat had become as faint as a thread, ready to snap at any moment. My body burned like fire, yet my life was slipping away. Inside the camp, 17 women were crushed by despair. The air was thick with suppressed sobs and muttered words. It's over, it's all over. Su Fei Bao, please wake up. Look at us. Meow Meow collapsed onto my chest, bawling, as though her warmth could hold on to me. Qin Jejia kept her hand on my forehead, frozen like a statue, tears falling onto my scorching skin, drying instantly. It was over, truly over. The camp was silent. The only sounds left were the women's muffled cries. It felt like sinking into a twisted dream. I dreamed of those 17 women stripping me bare, circling me in a tight ring, looking at me from head to toe as if conducting an experiment. Absurd and humiliating. But even worse was the strange sense within me, like a fire spreading quietly in my chest. Chaos in the west. Heaven's shield system activated, you damn token. System starting. Host afflicted by a lethal virus, coral decay. Ancient viral particles are released during the mass bleaching and death of coral reefs. It contaminates water sources, infects marine life, and spreads via seafoam aerosols. Incubation period, a few hours to 3 days. Rapid onset. Virus properties, only infects adult males. System searching for solutions. Activating perk, national craftsmanship. Warning, incompatible. Failed. Activating perk, skill proficiency. Warning, incompatible. Failed. Activating perk, creator. Activating skill, carbon cell. Activating skill, combat. Activating skill, sewing. All failed. Entering deep compatibility mode. Asterisk asterisk. My consciousness felt like it was being ripped apart as I plunged into an even deeper dream. The sky above turned into overlapping vortexes of laws and runes, twisting, morphing, occasionally becoming giants before fracturing into blurred remnants. The heavens pressed down onto the world, dumping billions of people into extreme survival scenarios. Islands, roads, wastelands, deserts. Some died instantly. Some barely hung on. Others climbed upward, stepping on corpses to survive. Men and women, the strong and the weak, amalgamated, invaded, and consumed one another. A wave of indescribable rage surged up from the depths of my soul. Heavens, I own you. System found a solution. Generating new specialized perk. Congratulations, host. New perk acquired. Hyper Healing Mind. Hyper Healing Mind. Upon activation, you enter bullet time. Physical strength skyrockets tenfold. Medical knowledge floods your mind like instinct, allowing you to identify the root cause of injuries and diseases instantaneously, dissect and dissolve viral structures, trigger rampant cellular regeneration, and heal wounds as though time is rewinding. The root of coral decay lay in a virus. At death's doorstep, I'd been gifted this ability. My body flipped inside out, completely transformed. The viral particles that had just begun attacking my cells were instantly dismantled and broken apart under my scrutinizing gaze. Newly regenerated cells grew with explosive speed, displacing necrotic tissues. Organs were rebuilt, reconstructed forcibly. All of it happened in a blink. Cough, cough. I gasped myself awake, my mind still ringing as clarity returned. I only faintly remembered my prior collapse. My brain felt like it was exploding, my entire body burning, before I blacked out. When I came to, the term hyperhealing mind now resided clearly in my thoughts. Though I had already grown accustomed to the absurdity of the system, what truly left me baffled was a pile of soft bodies on top of me, proximity infused with teary sobs, along with a lingering sweet fragrance. Looking down, I saw Meow Meow, her tear-streaked face pressed hard against my chest. As I glanced further, there was Qin Jiejia, Su Ro, Jiang Nina, Song Yan, Lin Xinglan, a whole circle of familiar faces, all wearing expressions of post-crisis relief. 17 women were huddled around me, nearly smothering me under their collective weight. Before I could utter a word, I felt a gust of cold air below. I glanced down, and my entire body froze on the spot. No pants, no shirt, stark naked. Who the hell stripped me? The atmosphere froze in an instant. My face flushed red, embarrassed to high heaven, wishing I could burrow into the ground. Sufei, you're awake. Qin Jiejia gasped, the first to react, her tone a mix of shock and joy. He's really awake. Fei Bao, you scared me to death. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. The camp's prior silence shattered into a torrent of emotions, laughter and tears blending together chaotically. Qin Jiejia held onto my neck, trembling with lingering fear as joyful relief flooded in. I like you, Sufei. You can't ever leave us. I was so scared. Her abrupt confession silenced the entire gathering. Just as swiftly, a cascade of emotional declarations followed from the others. I like you too, Sufei. Don't scare us like that again. Me too. Me too. I stared dumbfounded. Coming back from the brink of death not only earned me new powers, it seemed I'd inexplicably gained a few confessions as well. How was this anything but a win? Still grappling with the surreal turn of events, I suddenly burst into a bright smile. You're still smiling. Qin Jiejia fumed, hitting me lightly on the arm in a mix of frustration and shyness. You nearly died. We were all terrified. Exactly. How could you be so carefree? The rest of them joined in, their lingering excitement betraying the grievances they tried to express. Surrounded on all sides, warmth filled my chest. I decided to play it straight-faced serious. To ensure nothing like this happens again, I'd like to formally announce, the great task of reviving our island population lies in your hands. As soon as the words left my mouth, pin-drop silence fell over the group. Every single woman's face turned an unmistakable shade of crimson. They lowered their gazes, some fiddled nervously with their sleeves, others pretended to stare off into the distance. Even the boldest among them avoided meeting my eyes. Only Meow Meow, still lying against my chest, boldly nodded her head in earnest agreement. Yes, reproduction. It's a must. The gravity of her own enthusiastic response dawned on her a second too late. Her face turned as red as a cherry, with the blush extending to the tips of her ears and down her neck, prompting her to quickly cover her mouth. The following days blurred together with indulgent pampering. The moment I opened my eyes, there were freshly grilled fish and rich broth waiting. The tiniest mention or gesture of discomfort, "Oh, my back feels sore," was immediately met with eager massages. Meow Meow was the most devoted of the bunch, bringing over a tiny stool every day to station herself by my side. With her small fists, she'd knead my shoulders and legs with feather-light touch, as if scratching an itch. But she was so earnestly focused, her effort was palpable. Meow. Stop hitting my back, Meow Meow. I'm already fine, I said for the nth time with a helpless expression. No way. Sister Jia said you have internal injuries and need to rest. Even broken bones take 100 days to heal. Meow Meow insisted, her face stern, and intensified the force of her massage. No matter how much I explained, it was useless. In their eyes, I was the hero who almost lost my life protecting everyone, so I deserved to lie down and be taken care of. The most ridiculous part? Qin Jiejia even made a simple stretcher out of vines and wood, saying it was to make it easier for you to get some fresh air. Thus, the camp had this bizarre scene. I was carried around like some kind of ancient emperor on tour, with 7 or 8 girls taking shifts to lift me. Occasionally, they brought me to the beach to sunbathe, even using large banana leaves to block the sun for me. Then, they would haul me to the foot of the mountain, saying I needed to inspect the caged wild chickens near the camp. Wherever I went, the girls looked at me with a mix of admiration and concern. Goosebumps covered my skin. If they kept pampering me like this, I was genuinely going to turn into a useless lump. I couldn't take it anymore. Today, I was going to prove I was fine and get these colleagues of mine to stop treating me like fragile glass. Everyone, gather round. I jumped off the stretcher and landed steadily in the middle of the camp. The girls carrying me were so startled they rushed to support me. Fei Bao, don't move around recklessly. Quick, lie back down. Qin Jejia and Su Ro rushed over too, their faces filled with nervousness. I'm fine, really fine, I said, raising a hand to stop their frantic exclamations. Sweeping my gaze over the 17 worried faces around me, I gritted my teeth and said, if you don't believe me, I'll show you something. As my words hung in the air, I closed my eyes. The surroundings went dead silent. Everyone stared at me, not knowing what I was going to do. I focused my mind. Skill activation, super healing mindset. The next second, it was as if something detonated in my chest. My heart began pounding at an insane rhythm. My blood surged through my body like molten lava, and a formidable strength began pushing outward from within my very bones. My brain felt like it was being flooded with icy, calculated data. Physical abilities enhanced. Strength increased tenfold. Speed 45 meters per second. Endurance high intensity for 10 minutes. Jump height 3.2 meters from standing position. Combat top-tier skill integration, muscle memory initiated. I snapped my eyes open. My face was flushed red, veins bulged on my temples and neck, and my eyes were bloodshot. Gone was my usual peaceful demeanor. I looked like an entirely different person now, exuding an intimidating ferocity. A girl shrieked in fear. Su Fei, what's happening to you? Qin Jejia's voice wavered with unease as she tried stepping closer. In that instant, my perception of the world shifted. Qin Jejia's footsteps appeared in slow motion, her every worry etched into her face with vivid clarity. Su Ro's hand, raised to grab me, seemed frozen in midair. Even sound faded away, leaving only a drawn-out, low hum reverberating through time. I turned to focus on the pot of boiling water over the campfire. The water's furious bubbling seemed slowed and deliberate, and I could even make out the distorted reflections of the camp in each bubble. The bubbles rose to the surface with exaggerated leisure, the thin membrane stretching to its limit before finally popping, beads of water flying softly outward in what seemed like suspended animation. I shifted my gaze toward my coworkers, standing in the distance. The ocean breeze tugged at Meow Meow's loose animal skin clothes, the slow, rhythmic rise and fall of her chest strikingly detailed in this drawn-out moment. Even a dried coconut leaf spinning down from a tree followed impossibly slow, deliberate arcs. A fly suspended midair beat its wings at an agonizingly sluggish pace. This was bullet time. With my physical attributes boosted tenfold, the world had slowed to a crawl in my perception. Adapting to the new tempo, I decided it was time to show them a demonstration. A wicked grin crept across my face. I moved. To Qin Jejia, Su Ro, Meow Meow, and the rest of the 17 girls, all they saw in real time was this. One moment, I stood ominously, not moving a muscle, as they hesitated to approach me. The next moment, a sudden gust of wind seemed to erupt from the center of the camp, and I was gone. Where'd he go? Song Yan screamed. There. Shun Yinhua stammered, pointing shakily toward the beach dozens of meters away. Everyone whipped their heads around. On the sand, a blurred afterimage flashed erratically, a human-shaped streak zooming in every direction at impossible, lightning-fast speeds, too quick for the eyes to track properly. Each step sent sand flying high into the air, as if small grenades were detonating beneath my feet. In just a second, I crossed the entire beach. I wasn't running. I was practically flying inches above the ground. Oh, my God, is that even human? Their minds thrashed for an answer amid the impossibility of what they were witnessing. But the show wasn't over. The afterimage reached the far edge of the beach and suddenly crouched low. The ground beneath me caved as the intensity of my motion compressed it like a small crater. And then, without warning, I launched myself into the air with an explosive burst. Boom! My 1.8-meter frame shot upwards, 1 meter, 3 meters high, silhouetted against the blazing sunlight for a fleeting moment like some deity descending to earth. Time seemed to pause, trapping everyone's breaths in their throats. Ah! Meow Meow shrieked so loudly she had to clap her hands over her mouth to suppress it, eyes brimming with tears. Fei Bao is flying. This is impossible. This defies all science. Is he Superman? Up in the air, I felt the rush of wind on my skin before gravity reclaimed me. My body began its descent, aimed squarely back toward the sand below. With a resounding crash, I landed. Boom! Jumping up and then crashing back down. All of it happened in just 3 or 4 seconds. But those mere seconds shattered the perceptions of my 17 female co-workers. As the dust settled around me, I stood in the middle of the crater, patting the dirt off my clothes. Aside from being a little out of breath, I didn't have a single scratch on me. I looked up toward the camp, where the group of women stood frozen in shock, and I even gave them a quick grin. Dead silence. For a full 5 seconds. Then, way odd. A cacophony of screams exploded. What the hell was that? Teleportation. He can teleport. How did he even do that jump? Is Su Fei even human? This is crazier than movie special effects. 17 women stormed down from the beach toward me, surrounding me so tightly that there wasn't an inch of space left to breathe. Meow Meow was the first to squeeze in front of me, staring up with wide, awestruck eyes. Fei Bao, Liu. Qin Jia grabbed onto my arm, squeezing hard while her voice trembled. Tell me, be honest, have you been modified by aliens or something? Su Ro circled around me, clicking her tongue as she surveyed me from head to toe. This strength, this physique, it's totally out of this world. Even Song Yan and Shun Inua went all out, poking at my chest and patting my back, inspecting every inch of me. He's warm. He really is human. This isn't a dream. What we saw, it was real. Their earlier worry and concern instantly evaporated. What replaced it was shock, curiosity, and borderline fanatical admiration. Standing in the middle of the chaos, listening to their uproar, I couldn't help feeling ridiculously smug. With my display, their concern had transformed into something entirely different, no longer hovering over me in fear, but looking at me with awe-filled relief. Finally, I could breathe easy. What I needed most was time, to work on things that could actually change this island. Not far from camp, on a cleared patch of land, a strange blend of primitive and advanced work was underway. On one side was a makeshift boiler built from mud and stones. Fire licked at the base until the metal glowed red, heating water that bubbled and steamed. On the other side, near a simple furnace, I used long iron tongs to pull out a blindingly bright piece of metal, slammed it onto a flat rock, and hammered away at it. Asterisk clang, clang, clang. Asterisk the sound of metal striking metal echoed through the forest. For someone from the modern world, the principles behind steam engines and generators aren't exactly mysteries, especially since I have the system's help. Thanks to feeding, I kept getting iron and copper delivered to me. All I had to do was turn them into actual parts. But the devil's in the details. How to connect the piston to the crankshaft. How to set up steam pipes to stop them from leaking. How to make sure the coil spins stably within the magnetic field. And worst of all, how to reliably transform the piston's straightforward motion into continuous rotary motion. While adjusting the boiler and testing steam pressure on pipes, I worked by the furnace to forge metal into gears, crankshafts, flywheels, and piston rods. The more parts one made, the smoother everything came together, and the system wouldn't shut up. Skill acquired, mechanical engineering. Skill acquired, electrics. Skill acquired, electronics. Skill acquired, power systems. When I finally pieced together the most primitive form of a generator using natural magnets and self-coiled copper wires, the system hit me with a fresh round of updates. Skill acquired, magnetism. Skill acquired, nuclear magnetism. Skill acquired, electromagnetic optics. Skill acquired, permanent magnetics. And just as I started to figure out how to stabilize the generator's output, my screen got spammed again. Skill acquired, microwave systems. Skill acquired, electromagnetism. Skill acquired, bioelectromagnetics. I wiped some soot off my face, rolling my eyes. Can you not dump all this at once? My brain's about to explode. Despite my complaints, my hands didn't stop working. The knowledge didn't hurt going in. It actually felt like I already knew it. Almost as if everything clicked the moment I touched the tools, like second nature. It hit me then. Electricity, this was the key to everything. We'd been on this island a little over a month now. I understood perfectly. If any one of those billions thrown into an unknown world didn't have a system to support them, the best they'd manage would be some crude stone spears or axes. But if I could really figure out electricity, this wouldn't just be survival. It would be the start of a revolution, one sparked by my own hands. Back at camp, Shin Jejia sat on the wooden steps of a cabin, her eyes fixed on the figure off in the distance, the one covered in ash and sweat, endlessly busy. Her thoughts were a tangled mess. Meow meow, she murmured, her voice low, almost as if she was speaking to herself. Do you think I was too impulsive? Huh? About what, Jejia? Meow 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 crouched near the fence, using a little stick to tease some baby chicks and ducklings. She glanced up, her face full of confusion. Seeing her carefree expression, Shin Jejia sighed. Asking her was useless. They're so cute. I'm gonna go find some bugs for them to eat. With a quick bounce, Meow Meow darted off into the bushes, leaving Shin Jejia to stew in her thoughts alone. That day, when I'd nearly died, she'd been shaking so hard she couldn't stop. The words had just slipped out. But once she saw I was totally fine, alive and kicking, that confession had turned unbearably awkward. A faint, flowery scent drifted by as someone sat beside her. It was Su Ro. Still thinking about how you confessed to Su Fei the other day? Su Ro cut straight to the chase, nailing Jejia right where it hurt. Shin Jejia stiffened, but eventually nodded, hurriedly trying to explain herself. I thought he was really going to die. I was terrified, and then after he was fine, it was just, the more she continued, the more flustered she became, the less confident she felt. Su Ro smiled meaningfully. Actually, Su Fei might like you too. Why? Shin Jejia snapped her head around, panic filling her eyes. Su Ro covered her mouth, laughing like she held some juicy secret, and lowered her voice. Because that night, in the middle of the night, I saw you and Fei Bao kissing. Shin Jejia's mind went blank, the blood rushing to her head. Her face flushed red in an instant. Nonsense. I didn't. Su Ro leaned in closer, her smile growing more assured. I saw it. Shin Jejia was utterly speechless, covering her face with trembling hands. You saw everything? Uh-huh. Su Ro tilted her chin up slightly. Shin Jejia's head shot up, her hands still on her face, her whole body frozen. What? Her mind was a complete mess. The more she thought about it, the messier it got, and her face burned even hotter. Su Ro, staring at her flustered and embarrassed state, deliberately added fuel to the fire. A guy kisses you and then avoids you, clearly lost in his own thoughts. What do you think that means? Shin Jejia froze. Means what? Means he's into you too, duh. Su Ro gave her forehead a playful tap with her finger, then lowered her voice for one final jab. But Fei Bao is the type of guy who can handle everything else, except understanding his own feelings, just like Meow Meow. She glanced around at their simple campsite and suddenly said, in a place like this, where surviving itself is tough, who has time for love? As Shin Jejia's heartbeat quickened, that statement burrowed into her mind like a hook, pulling her further into the whirlpool of questioning her own feelings. What do I really think? Suddenly, loud rhythmic booming shattered the stillness of the clearing. Boom, boom, clank, clank. The machine I had cobbled together from scraps finally started running steadily. Steam rushed into the metal cylinders, the pistons pumping, turning the crankshaft and the flywheel made of stone, which then spun the crude generator with a belt at high speed. The copper wires connected to the bulb, its carbonized bamboo filament first glowed red, then yellow, and finally lit up with a faint but determined light piercing through the darkness. It worked. I clenched my fist, my heart pounding hard. On this deserted island, I had just lit the first lamp. I quickly turned to the boiler and twisted the pressure release valve. Hiss! Steam burst out, the pressure dropped, and the pistons slowed down until they clanked to a halt. The generator stopped spinning, and after a few flickers, the bulb went dark again. The only sound around was the crackling of the campfire. I stared at that hideous yet significant machine and snapped my fingers. Done. The next morning, I was up at dawn, full of energy like I'd discovered an unlimited supply of it inside me. After all, I was now the guy who could make electricity. The feeling was exhilarating, like stealing a piece of fire from the gods in this desolate place. My soul was practically soaring. Now, I was going to aim even higher. The goal was clear. I grabbed an axe and chopped all the wood we had into uniform blocks, stacking them neatly beside the steam engine. This was the firewood. Then I lifted a large banana leaf, revealing a mound of coal piled up underneath. This was the real heavy-duty stuff, much more efficient than the wood. With everything in place, I grabbed a hefty copper ingot, placed it on a stone anvil, and wielded a hammer. With my national craftsman skill in full swing, Every strike of the hammer was precise, like I had calculated it to the millimeter. The copper ingot lengthened and gradually took shape, becoming a copper rod of consistent thickness. Switching to a smaller hammer, I polished and refined the rod, then heated it until it softened. With practiced hands, I coiled it neatly. 1 loop, 2 loops, 3 loops. Before long, the copper rod had transformed into a tightly wound, symmetrical spiral, a supersized spring if you will. I installed this mega spring beside the generator. Then I pulled 2 thick copper wires from the generator's positive and negative brush connections, attaching them to either end of the spiral. Voila! A crude but functional electromagnetic heater was finished. I exhaled deeply and began the final tests. I shoved firewood into the combustion chamber and lit it. The flames roared as the furnace walls heated up to a glowing red. Then I added coal. The water in the boiler came to a rolling boil, steam shooting through the pipes, forcing the pistons into motion. Clank, clank, clank. The steam engine roared back to life. It spun the generator. The rotor whirred, and current flowed steadily through the copper lines. And when the electricity passed through the copper spiral, something fascinating happened. Buzz! The spiral vibrated slightly, and the air around it seemed to waver as if distorted by heat. I casually tossed a damp leaf toward it. Before it even touched the coil, the water on the leaf sizzled and evaporated. The leaf itself shriveled instantly, curling up and sizzling as it scorched. It worked. This thing could straight up roast someone alive. For the next 4 or 5 days, I dove into it obsessively. I repeatedly tested the output of the steam engine and the generator, fine-tuning the heater's parameters, and meticulously documented the effects of varying voltages and currents. The camp was filled with constant roaring, hammering, and the clanging of metal. Shin Jujia and Su Ro initially went from stunned to completely desensitized. All they knew was that I was tinkering with another one of my incomprehensible contraptions. But the more they watched, the more it felt like I was on the verge of dismantling the entire island, only to rebuild it from scratch. Another few days passed. With National Craftsman and a bunch of other skills in overdrive, the pile of parts on my workbench grew larger by the day, building towards something even more ambitious. This time, I got downright audacious and managed to piece together a makeshift radar. The copper plate combined with coils serves as a receiver. A battery drives a device, generating a stable alternating electric field as the source. Then, I slapped together a haphazard transmitter and stuck a long copper rod antenna pointing skyward. I also crafted a wearable square box using wooden boards and animal hide, packing the battery and key components inside. Still not satisfied, I hollowed out a large seashell, wound thin copper wires inside it, creating a trumpet-shaped signal amplifier. Once the circuits were all connected, I tuned the frequency to an estimated safe band. Messing around recklessly with power or frequency could cause serious trouble, and I'd rather not take myself out first.